Finally, my useless wife is dead. Ryan Carter popped the champagne right there in the hospital room, foam spilling onto the cold tile floor. His mistress Vanessa grabbed his face and kissed him hard, while Elena lay 3 feet away, tubes in her throat, heart still beating. 3 years of pretending to love that pathetic woman. Ryan laughed, wiping lipstick from his mouth. 3 years of watching her scrub my floors like a dog. It's over, baby. We're free. But Elena heard everything. Every word. Every laugh. Every plan they made to bury her alive. And what they didn't know would destroy them. Elena wasn't just a housewife. She was their boss. A billionaire who owned the very ground they stood on. And in 28 days, the dead woman would rise. Before we begin this incredible journey, please subscribe to the channel and stay with Elena until the very end. Drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I want to see how far her story travels across the world. Ryan Carter poured champagne into 2 glasses. His hands were steady, his smile was wide. His wife lay dying beside him, and he had never felt more alive. To freedom, he said, raising his glass. Vanessa clinked hers against his. To us. They drank deeply, standing at the foot of Elena's hospital bed. The machines beeped. The ventilator hissed. And Ryan Carter laughed like a man released from prison. You know what I'm going to do first, he said, loosening his black tie. I'm going to sell that ugly couch she picked out. The brown one with the flowers. God, I hated that couch. I hated everything about your house, Vanessa replied. It smelled like cleaning products and desperation. That was Elena. Cleaning products and desperation. That's all she ever was. Inside her frozen body, Elena screamed. She heard them. Every syllable, every cruel laugh. Her mind blazed with perfect clarity while her body refused to move. She tried to lift her hand. Nothing. She tried to open her eyes. Nothing. She tried to speak, to cry, to do anything at all. Nothing. She was buried alive inside her own flesh. Ryan walked closer to the bed. He looked down at his wife's pale face, at the oxygen mask covering her mouth, at the closed eyes that hid a fully conscious mind. Can you hear me in there, Elena? He leaned close enough that she could smell the champagne on his breath. Probably not. The doctors gave you a 5% chance. 5%. That's basically 0. He straightened up and shrugged. But just in case some part of you is still listening, I want you to know something. I never loved you. Not once. Not for a single day of our pathetic marriage. Elena's heart shattered. 3 years. 3 years of waking before dawn to make his breakfast. 3 years of staying up past midnight to finish his laundry. 3 years of backaches, exhaustion, and tears hidden in bathroom stalls. For nothing. For a man who had never loved her at all. She's not responding, Vanessa observed, peering at Elena's face. I don't think she can hear anything. Even if she could, what difference would it make? Ryan finished his champagne and set the glass on Elena's bedside table. She can't move. She can't speak. She's basically a vegetable with a heartbeat. Vanessa giggled. That's terrible. That's the truth. The door swung open. Margaret Carter entered like she owned the building. Ryan's mother was 63 years old, dressed in black Chanel, and possessed the warmth of a January funeral. Is she still breathing? Margaret asked. Unfortunately, Ryan replied. Margaret walked to the bed and stared down at her daughter-in-law with unconcealed disgust. I warned you, she said to Elena's motionless face. 3 years ago I told you. A woman who tries too hard becomes invisible. All that cooking and cleaning, all that desperate service. You thought it would make my son love you. She laughed coldly. But you can't earn love with labor, dear. Love isn't a paycheck. You don't clock in and collect your reward. Some women are born to be loved and some women are born to be used. You were clearly the latter. Elena wanted to scream. She wanted to rise from that bed and slap the smug expression off Margaret's face. She wanted to tell them all the truth about who she really was. But she couldn't move. couldn't speak, could only listen and remember, and hate. "When can we start the funeral arrangements?" Margaret asked, turning to Ryan. "The doctors want to wait. Something about hospital protocols." "Ridiculous. She's clearly gone. Anyone with eyes can see that." Vanessa raised her hand timidly. "Actually, Mrs. Carter, I was thinking about the guest list. Should we keep it small or—" "There won't be any guests." Margaret cut her off. Elena had no friends, no family, no one who would miss her. "We'll have a private service, quick and cheap, just like her life." Elena heard everything. No friends, no family, no one who would miss her. Was that really how they saw her? As a woman so insignificant that her death warranted nothing more than a budget funeral. They had no idea. They had no idea that Elena Mitchell, not Elena Carter, but Elena Mitchell had built an empire worth over $2 billion. They had no idea that she owned 14 companies across America. Real estate, technology, private equity, manufacturing. They had no idea that she had chosen to hide, chosen to live simply, chosen to test whether anyone could love her for herself, not for her money. And they had failed the test spectacularly. Ryan checked his phone and frowned. "The doctor's coming. We should probably look sad." "I'll try," Vanessa said, arranging her face into an expression of concern. Margaret didn't bother. "I refuse to pretend grief for a woman who meant nothing to me." The door opened and Dr. Samuel Brooks walked in. He was 54 years old with silver hair and steady hands. He had spent 30 years in medicine, and he had seen every kind of human cruelty. But what he had witnessed in this room over the past 3 days had tested even his experienced composure. "I need to examine the patient," he said calmly. "Alone." Ryan frowned. "We're family. We have a right to—" "Hospital policy. Please wait outside." Something in his voice left no room for argument. Ryan, Vanessa, and Margaret filed out reluctantly, and Dr. Brooks closed the door behind them. Then he walked to Elena's bedside and leaned close to her ear. "Mrs. Mitchell," he whispered, "I know exactly who you are." Elena's heart nearly stopped. How did he know? How could he possibly know? "My name is Samuel Brooks," the doctor continued quietly. 11 years ago, your company acquired this hospital. You probably don't remember, but you attended the ceremony. I shook your hand. You told me to take good care of your patients." He paused. "Well, Mrs. Mitchell, I'm taking care of you now, and I need you to understand something very important." His voice dropped even lower. "Your husband is planning to kill you." Elena's mind exploded. "He's already started the paperwork," Dr. Brooks continued, "requesting comfort care only. No aggressive treatment. He wants us to disconnect your machines and let you die naturally. His mother is pushing the timeline. They want this finished within 2 weeks. 2 weeks. In 2 weeks they would murder her. I've contacted your attorney, Marcus Webb. He's been handling your affairs since your father passed away. He's filing emergency injunctions as we speak, trying to block Ryan's authority over your medical decisions." Dr. Brooks straightened up and spoke in a normal voice, aware that someone might be listening. "But the law is complicated, Mrs. Mitchell. Ryan is your husband. He has rights. And unless you wake up to speak for yourself." He let the sentence hang. "I've run additional tests on your brain activity. The results are extraordinary. Your mind is far more active than we typically see in coma patients. I believe you have a genuine chance of recovery." He leaned close again. "But you have to fight. Fight harder than you've ever fought for anything in your life. Because if you don't wake up soon, these people will bury you alive." Elena focused everything she had on her right hand. "Move." Her finger twitched. Dr. Brooks saw it. His eyes widened. "Again," he whispered urgently. "Do it again." Elena concentrated with every ounce of her willpower. Her finger moved, then her entire hand trembled just for a second. "Remarkable," Dr. Brooks breathed. Absolutely remarkable. You're fighting your way back. He squeezed her hand gently. Keep fighting, Mrs. Mitchell. I'll hold them off as long as I can. But you need to wake up. You need to come back and show these people who they're really dealing with. He released her hand and walked to the door. You can come back in now, he announced to the waiting family. Her condition is unchanged. Ryan pushed past him impatiently. We need to discuss next steps. The longer this drags on, the more expensive it gets. Medical decisions require careful consideration, Mr. Carter. She's my wife. I should be able to... The hospital has an ethics committee for situations like this. I've scheduled a review for next week. Ryan's face darkened. Next week? That's unacceptable. Those are the protocols. Dr. Brooks's voice remained calm but firm. I suggest you use the time to reflect on what your wife would truly want. He left before Ryan could respond. That night, Elena lay alone in the darkness. The machines beeped their steady rhythm. The ventilator breathed for her with mechanical precision. Outside her window, the lights of Boston glittered like scattered diamonds. And inside her trapped mind, Elena began to remember. She remembered meeting Ryan for the first time. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon. She had been standing outside a coffee shop fighting with a broken umbrella when a handsome stranger appeared at her side. Need some help with that? She looked up into warm brown eyes and an easy smile. He was tall, well-dressed, charming, in that effortless way that some men possessed. I think this umbrella is beyond saving. She laughed. Then let me buy you a coffee. Consider it compensation for the weather gods being cruel. That was the moment Elena Mitchell made her fateful decision. She had been tired. Tired of men who looked at her and saw dollar signs. Tired of relationships built on net worth instead of genuine connection. Tired of wondering whether anyone could ever love her, really love her without knowing about her billions. So she had hidden everything. She introduced herself as just Elena. No last name. No family history. No mention of the empire she had built from her father's foundation. She wore simple clothes, drove a modest car, lived in a small apartment that cost less per month than she usually spent on dinner. And she waited. Waited to see if Ryan Carter could love her for who she was, not for what she owned. He had seemed perfect. He was a mid-level manager at a marketing firm. He drove a used Honda. He apologized on their second date for not being able to afford an expensive restaurant. I'm not a rich guy, he told her, looking almost embarrassed. I mean, I do okay, but I can't give you some fancy lifestyle or anything. Elena had smiled. I don't need fancy. I just need real. He had kissed her that night, and she had believed, really truly believed, that she had finally found what she was looking for. What a fool she had been. Now, 3 years later, she understood the truth. Ryan hadn't loved her. He had simply found her useful. She cooked his meals, cleaned his apartment, and demanded nothing in return. What man wouldn't keep such a convenient arrangement? But the moment she became inconvenient, the moment she collapsed from exhaustion and slipped into a coma, his true nature emerged. And it was monstrous. The next morning, Ryan arrived early. He didn't hold Elena's hand or speak soft words of encouragement. He went straight to the cabinet beside her bed and began rifling through her belongings. Insurance papers, he muttered. There has to be something. He found nothing valuable, just a worn cookbook, a few photographs, a small silver bracelet that had belonged to her grandmother. He threw the bracelet back with disgust. Worthless. 3 years married to me and she couldn't even get life insurance. Unbelievable. His phone buzzed. He answered it. Hey, baby. No, nothing useful. She didn't have a penny to her name. I don't even think she had a savings account. Vanessa's voice crackled through the speaker. That's so typical. She probably spent everything on groceries and cleaning supplies. Ryan laughed bitterly. Probably. God, what a waste of 3 years. Come home, baby. I made breakfast. You made breakfast. Ryan sounded genuinely surprised. Since when do you cook? since I moved into your house and decided to be a better wife than she ever was." Vanessa's voice dripped with satisfaction. "I even used her apron, the one with the little flowers. I thought it would be funny." Elena heard everything. Vanessa was in her house, wearing her apron, using her kitchen, sleeping in her bed. The woman who had called her pathetic and desperate was now living her life. The rage that built inside Elena was unlike anything she had ever experienced. It burned through her paralyzed body like wildfire, scorching everything in its path. She would destroy them. She would rise from this bed, and she would burn their lives to ashes. Ryan ended his call and glanced at Elena one more time. "You know what your biggest mistake was," he said conversationally. "You tried too hard. You were so desperate to be loved that you turned yourself into a doormat. And nobody loves a doormat, Elena. They just wipe their feet on it." He walked to the door. "Anyway, I've got things to do, places to be, a life to live. Try not to die before I get the paperwork sorted out. Okay, it would really mess up my schedule." He left. And Elena, alone in her prison of flesh, felt her hatred crystallize into something cold and sharp and deadly. Day 5 brought Margaret back for another visit. She sat beside Elena's bed with the casual comfort of someone visiting a particularly uninteresting museum exhibit. "I've been going through your things," Margaret announced. "Ryan asked me to help clear out the house, make room for Vanessa's belongings." She examined her manicured nails. "You didn't own much of value, did you? Some cheap furniture, discount clothes, that hideous cookbook you were always reading." Elena's grandmother's cookbook. The one filled with handwritten recipes passed down through 3 generations. The one thing Elena had brought from her old life into her new one. "I threw it away," Margaret said casually. "It was falling apart anyway. No point keeping garbage." Inside her mind, Elena screamed with rage and grief. That cookbook was irreplaceable. Those recipes were the only connection she had to her grandmother, to her mother, to the women in her family who had come before her. And Margaret had thrown it in the trash like it was nothing. "You know what your problem was, Elena?" Margaret continued, clearly enjoying the sound of her own voice. "You had no ambition, no drive. You were content to just exist, cooking meals, cleaning floors, waiting for my son to come home and pat you on the head like a good dog." She stood and walked to the window. A woman with ambition would have demanded more, would have pushed for a better life, would have made something of herself instead of wasting away in that tiny apartment serving a man who didn't want her. Elena wanted to laugh. She had more ambition than Margaret could possibly imagine. She had built companies, created jobs, changed lives. Her net worth exceeded Margaret's wildest dreams. But she had hidden it all. Hidden it to find love. Hidden it to test whether anyone could see past the surface to the person beneath. And they had all failed. Every single one of them. Anyway, Margaret turned back from the window. "I just wanted to let you know that your funeral arrangements are proceeding nicely. Small ceremony, simple casket. No flowers, they're too expensive, and frankly, you don't deserve them." She walked to the door. "I'd say I hope you find peace, but honestly, I don't care either way. You were a burden in life, and you're a burden in death. At least soon you'll stop being our problem." She left. Elena lay in the silence, processing everything she had heard. They were erasing her. Not just planning her death, but erasing every trace of her existence. Throwing away her belongings. Dismissing her memories. Reducing her entire life to a small ceremony and a cheap casket. But they were wrong. Elena Mitchell was not so easily erased. And when she rose from this bed, when not if they would learn exactly how wrong they had been. Day 7 brought the most disturbing conversation yet. Ryan met with Dr. Brooks in the hallway outside Elena's room. The door was slightly open, and Elena heard every word. "I want to discuss end-of-life options," Ryan said bluntly. Dr. Brooks' voice remained carefully neutral. "Your wife is stable. Her vital signs are, she's in a coma. She's never waking up. We both know that. Actually, Mr. Carter, coma patients sometimes make remarkable recoveries. I've seen cases where... I don't want to hear about other cases. Ryan's voice hardened. I want to know our options for ending this, quickly and cleanly. There was a long pause. Are you asking me to euthanize your wife, Mr. Carter? I'm asking about comfort care, removing aggressive treatment, letting nature take its course. That would require documentation that such an approach aligns with the patient's wishes. I'm her husband. I know what she would want. Do you... Dr. Brooks's voice carried a subtle edge. Because the Elena I've observed seems like a fighter. She wouldn't give up easily. The Elena you've observed is a vegetable hooked up to machines. Whatever person she used to be is gone. Elena felt her rage building with every word. Gone. He thought she was gone. He thought he could just switch off her machines and walk away free to live his life with Vanessa while she rotted in a cheap grave. He had no idea what was coming. I'll need to consult with the ethics committee, Dr. Brooks said finally. These decisions can't be made lightly. Then consult quickly. Every day she stays alive costs money. Money I don't have. Elena almost laughed. Money he didn't have. She could buy this entire hospital with pocket change. She could buy Ryan's entire life 1,000 times over. But he didn't know that. None of them knew. And when they found out, their world would collapse around them. That night, Marcus Webb made his first secret visit. Elena's attorney was 61 years old, silver-haired and sharp-eyed. He had worked for her father before her and had managed her hidden empire with absolute discretion for over a decade. He waited until midnight, when the hospital corridors were empty and the nurses were occupied with other patients. Then he slipped into Elena's room and closed the door. Elena. His voice was barely a whisper. Dr. Brooks told me you can hear. If that's true, I need you to give me a sign. Elena concentrated with everything she had. Her finger moved. Marcus saw it and exhaled with relief. Thank God. I was afraid we were too late. He moved closer to her bedside. Listen carefully. Your husband has filed paperwork requesting authority over your medical decisions. He's arguing that you would want to discontinue treatment. I've filed emergency injunctions, but the legal situation is complicated. Elena's heart raced. Here's what I need you to understand. If you wake up when you wake up, everything changes. You can speak for yourself. You can revoke Ryan's authority. You can take back control of your life. He paused. But you have to wake up within the next 3 weeks. After that, the courts may side with Ryan. And once they do... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. I've also been documenting everything. Every conversation Ryan has had in this room. Every plan he's made. Every cruel word he's spoken while you lay here helpless. Marcus's voice hardened. When you wake up, you'll have everything you need to destroy him. Legally, financially, completely. He won't just lose you, he'll lose everything. Elena felt something shift inside her chest. Not despair. Not fear. Hope. I've also activated Protocol Omega, Marcus continued. Your contingency plan. The one you created 5 years ago in case something like this ever happened. Protocol Omega. Elena remembered designing it. A comprehensive system for protecting her assets and destroying anyone who betrayed her trust. She had never imagined she would actually need it. Everything is in place, Marcus assured her. Your companies are secure. Your assets are protected. Ryan can't touch a penny of your money because he doesn't even know it exists. He stood. All you have to do is wake up, Elena. Wake up, and I'll help you burn his world to the ground. He squeezed her hand gently. Fight. Fight harder than you've ever fought before. Because the woman I know, the woman who built an empire from nothing, that woman doesn't die in a hospital bed at 42 years old. That woman rises. That woman conquers. That woman wins. He released her hand. I'll be back in 3 days. Keep fighting. He slipped out as quietly as he had entered. And Elena, alone in the darkness, felt her resolve hardening into steel. She would wake up. She would rise. She would destroy them all. Day 12 arrived with Vanessa's cruelest visit yet. She entered the room carrying shopping bags, her heels clicking against the tile floor. She wore a designer dress that Elena recognized it was from Ryan's favorite boutique, the one he had always claimed was too expensive for them. "Look at me," Vanessa announced cheerfully, spinning in front of Elena's bed. "Isn't this dress gorgeous? Ryan bought it for me yesterday. Said I deserved something special for being so supportive during this difficult time." She laughed at her own joke. Difficult time. That's what we're calling it, as if watching you die slowly is some kind of hardship. She sat in the visitor's chair and began going through her shopping bags. "I got this for the funeral. Your funeral, obviously." She held up a black dress that probably cost more than Elena's entire fake wardrobe. "I wanted something that photographs well. There might be media coverage, you know. Local woman dies in coma, husband devastated. That kind of thing." Elena listened with cold fury. "Ryan's been practicing his grief face," Vanessa continued. "He's pretty good at it, actually. Years of pretending to love you gave him excellent acting skills." She examined herself in a compact mirror. "You know, I almost feel bad for you. Almost. You spent 3 years working yourself to death, and for what? A husband who couldn't wait to replace you. A mother-in-law who despised you. A life so pathetic that no one will even notice when you're gone." She closed her compact with a snap. "But that's the difference between us, isn't it? You had to work for everything. I just exist, and men fall at my feet. Ryan looked at you and saw a servant. He looks at me and sees a goddess." Elena's hatred burned like acid. "Want to know a secret?" Vanessa leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Ryan told me about you on our very first date. A year into your marriage, and he was already looking for someone else. He called you the maid he was legally required to keep. Isn't that hilarious? The maid he was legally required to keep." Those words seared themselves into Elena's memory. She would never forget them. Never forgive them. "He said you were desperate," Vanessa continued. "Always trying to please him. Always cooking and cleaning and hovering around like some kind of pathetic puppy. He said it made his skin crawl." She stood and walked to the bed, looking down at Elena with mock pity. "Poor Elena. You thought hard work would earn you love. But here's the truth, nobody told you useful isn't the same as wanted. Men keep useful women around. They don't love them. They can't. Because love requires admiration. And how can you admire a servant?" Elena felt her finger twitch beneath the blanket, then her hand. Then her entire arm trembled just for a moment. Vanessa didn't notice. She was too busy admiring her own reflection in the window. "Anyway, I should go. Ryan's taking me to dinner tonight. That Italian place you always wanted to try. He said it used to be too expensive, but apparently money stops being an issue when you're spending it on the right person." She gathered her shopping bags. "Sweet dreams, Elena. Or whatever it is vegetables do." She left, and the door clicked shut behind her. Elena lay in the silence, feeling the rage transform inside her. It was no longer hot and chaotic. It had become something else, something cold, something patient, something infinitely more dangerous. She would wake up. She would remember every word, and she would make Vanessa pay for each one. Day 14 brought a crisis. Elena heard Dr. Brooks arguing with Ryan in the hallway, their voices sharp with tension. "I'm expediting the ethics committee review," Ryan demanded. "This has gone on long enough." "Mr. Carter, these processes exist for good reason. We can't rush decisions about someone's life." "She doesn't have a life. She has a heartbeat and some brain waves. That's not living. The tests show significant brain activity, more than we typically see in coma patients. There's a real possibility she could recover." "A possibility isn't a guarantee, and I can't keep paying these bills while we wait for a miracle that's never coming." Elena heard footsteps approaching. The door opened, and Ryan entered alone. His face was dark with frustration. He walked to her bedside and stared down at her with naked hostility. "You're doing this on purpose, aren't you?" he said quietly. "Holding on just to spite me. That would be so like you. Passive-aggressive until the very end." Elena wanted to spit in his face. Well, it won't work, Ryan continued. I've hired a lawyer, a good one. He says there are ways to speed up the process. Medical opinions, court orders, whatever it takes. He leaned closer. You're going to die, Elena. One way or another, you're going to die. And when you do, I'm going to throw the biggest party this city has ever seen. I'll dance on your grave and toast to my freedom. His phone buzzed. He checked it and smiled. That's Vanessa. She wants to go shopping for furniture. We're redecorating the house, getting rid of all your ugly choices and starting fresh. He put his phone away. You know what I'm looking forward to most. Never hearing your voice again. Never listening to you ask about my day. Never watching you hover around me like some kind of desperate ghost. He walked to the door. Die faster, Elena. That's the best thing you can do for everyone. He left. And Elena, alone in her silent rage, felt something remarkable happen. Her eyes opened. Just for a second. Just a crack. Just enough to see the fluorescent lights above her bed. Then they closed again, and darkness returned. But she had done it. For the first time in 2 weeks, she had moved on purpose. She was coming back. And when she did, Ryan Carter would learn what it truly meant to fear. Day 18 brought progress. Dr. Brooks performed his evening examination with barely concealed excitement. Elena's vital signs were improving. Her brain activity had increased dramatically, and when he held her hand, she squeezed back. You're fighting, he whispered. You're actually fighting your way back. Elena concentrated on his voice, used it as an anchor, a lifeline pulling her toward consciousness. I've been buying you time, Dr. Brooks continued, delaying the ethics committee, filing paperwork, anything to give you more days. But Ryan is getting aggressive. He's hired lawyers. He's pushing hard. Elena squeezed his hand again. You need to wake up soon, Mrs. Mitchell. Really wake up. Open your eyes, speak. Move something undeniable, something that proves you're still in there. He paused. Marcus Webb was here again last night. He said to tell you that everything is ready. The moment you wake up, the moment you can give the order, he'll execute the plan. Every company Ryan has ever worked with, every connection he's ever made, all of it will disappear overnight. Elena felt her lips twitch. Almost a smile. 10 more days, Dr. Brooks said. That's my estimate based on your rate of recovery. 10 more days and you might be able to speak. He released her hand. The question is whether Ryan will wait that long. Day 20 brought the answer. Elena heard voices outside her room. Ryan, Margaret, Vanessa, and someone she didn't recognize. A lawyer based on his formal tone. The court has granted a hearing for next week, the lawyer explained. Given the patient's condition and the financial burden on the family, there's a strong chance we'll receive authorization to proceed with comfort care. Meaning what exactly? Margaret asked. Meaning we can remove the ventilator and let her pass naturally. It's painless, humane, and most importantly, final. Elena's heart raced. 1 week. They were going to kill her in 1 week. What about the ethics committee? Ryan asked. We're bypassing them, going directly to the court. It's faster and, frankly, more likely to succeed. Good. Ryan's voice was cold with satisfaction. Make it happen. The conversation continued, but Elena stopped listening. Her mind was racing, calculating, planning. 1 week. She had 1 week to wake up. 1 week to save her own life. 1 week to rise from this bed and destroy everyone who had tried to bury her. 7 days. 56 hours. She would make every second count. Day 22 brought a small victory. Elena opened her eyes. Not for a moment. Not for a second. She opened them fully and kept them open, staring at the ceiling above her bed. Dr. Brooks was there. He had been checking her vitals when it happened, and he nearly dropped his clipboard in shock. Elena, can you hear me? She tried to speak. Her throat burned. The ventilator tube blocked her words, but she nodded. Just barely. Just enough. Dr. Brooks' face broke into a smile. You're awake. You're actually awake. He leaned close. Don't try to talk yet. The ventilator needs to come out first. But I need you to understand something. Your husband's hearing is in 5 days. If you can't prove you're competent by then, they'll get their order. Elena nodded again. I'm going to call Marcus Webb. We need to move fast. He rushed out of the room, and Elena lay there breathing around the tube in her throat, staring at the ceiling with eyes that finally worked. She was back. Weak. Damaged. Unable to speak or move properly. But back. And 5 days from now, when Ryan Carter walked into that courtroom expecting to bury his wife, he would find something else entirely. He would find his own destruction waiting for him. Day 24 arrived like a starting gun. The ventilator came out at dawn. Elena's throat was raw, her voice barely a whisper, but she could speak. She could finally, after 24 days of silent imprisonment, speak. Marcus Webb was there within hours. He came alone, carrying a briefcase full of documents and a phone loaded with everything she would need. Elena. His voice broke slightly when he saw her sitting up in bed. Thank God. We thought we'd lost you. Not yet, she rasped. Not ever. He pulled a chair close to her bedside. The hearing is tomorrow. Ryan's lawyers are confident. They think this is just a formality. Elena smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Let them think that. What do you want to do? Elena's eyes hardened. I want to destroy him, completely. I want to take everything he has, everything he thought he'd get from me, and burn it in front of his face. Marcus nodded slowly. Protocol Omega is ready. 1 word from you, and it begins. 1 word. The word is now. Elena looked at her attorney, her loyal, patient, brilliant attorney who had protected her empire for over a decade. Not yet, she said. Tomorrow. I want to see his face. I want to walk into that courtroom and watch his world collapse. I want him to know exactly who destroyed him and why. Marcus smiled. Then that's exactly what we'll do. Day 25. The day of the hearing. The day Elena Mitchell rose from the dead. The courtroom was small and bureaucratic. Ryan sat at one table with his lawyer dressed in an expensive suit, wearing his practiced expression of concerned husband. Margaret sat in the gallery, dabbing at dry eyes with a handkerchief. Vanessa was notably absent, probably didn't want to be seen in public with a man whose wife wasn't quite dead yet. The judge entered. Everyone rose. And then the doors opened one more time. Elena walked in. She was thin, pale, wearing simple hospital clothes and moving with the careful steps of someone who had recently relearned how to walk. But she was alive, and she was smiling. Ryan's face went white. Margaret gasped. The lawyer dropped his papers. What? Ryan stammered. How? You're supposed to be dead. Elena's voice was rough, but clear. Sorry to disappoint. She walked slowly to the front of the courtroom, every step deliberate, every movement a statement. Your Honor, my name is Elena Mitchell Carter. I'm the woman these people have been trying to bury for the past month. The judge looked from Elena to Ryan and back again. Mrs. Carter, are you competent to speak for yourself? Completely. I woke up 3 days ago. I've been recovering in private preparing for this moment. Ryan found his voice. This is impossible. The doctors said I had a 5% chance, Elena interrupted. Turns out I'm good at beating odds. She turned to face her husband directly. Hello, Ryan. Did you miss me? His face was a mask of barely controlled panic. Elena, sweetheart, I'm so relieved you're okay. We were all so worried. Were you? Is that why you were planning my funeral while I was still breathing? Is that why you told your mistress that I was the maid you were legally required to keep? Is that why you asked the doctors about euthanasia? The courtroom went silent. I heard everything, Ryan. Every conversation, every plan, every cruel word you spoke while I lay in that bed unable to move. My body was paralyzed, but my mind was wide awake. She smiled coldly. And now, my love, it's time for you to learn something about me, something I probably should have told you 3 years ago. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number. Marcus, execute Protocol Omega. Authorization now. Ryan's phone buzzed, then buzzed again, then exploded with notifications. He looked down, confused. What? What is this? His face went gray. Terminated. What do you mean terminated? I've worked at Morrison & Associates for 6 years. This is a mistake. More notifications, more emails. His hands began to shake. Access revoked, credit cards canceled. What the hell is happening? Elena watched with satisfaction. Morrison & Associates was acquired this morning by Mitchell Holdings, which means I'm your boss. Or rather, I was your boss. As of 10 minutes ago, you're unemployed. Ryan stared at her incomprehension written across his face. Mitchell Holdings. That's a billion-dollar company. What does that have to do with... I own it. Elena's voice was steady. I am Elena Mitchell, founder and majority shareholder of Mitchell Holdings, net worth approximately $2.3 billion. The gasp that went through the courtroom was audible. I chose to hide my wealth. I wanted to know if anyone could love me for who I am, not for what I own. I married you thinking you were different, thinking you saw the person behind the poverty. Her eyes turned to ice. What I found was cruelty, betrayal, and 3 years of being treated like a servant in my own home. She stepped closer to Ryan. You celebrated my death while I lay paralyzed. You planned my funeral while my heart was still beating. You tried to convince doctors to kill me so you could be free. She leaned in close. Well, Ryan, now you're free. Free from your job. Free from your reputation. Free from every connection and opportunity you've ever had. Because I'm going to make sure that every door you knock on for the rest of your life closes in your face. Ryan's knees buckled. He grabbed the table for support. Elena, please. I didn't know. I didn't understand. If I had known who you really were. That's exactly the point. Elena straightened up. If you had known who I really was, you would have treated me differently. You would have been kind, respectful, loving, because you would have been afraid of my power. She shook her head slowly. But you didn't know. So you showed me exactly who you really are. And now, Ryan Carter, you're going to live with the consequences. She turned to Margaret, who sat frozen in the gallery, her face the color of old paper. As for you, Mrs. Carter, the woman who said I brought this on myself, the woman who threw away my grandmother's cookbook, the woman who called me nobody. Elena's voice hardened. I'm not going to destroy you the way I'm destroying your son. You're his mother, and I don't believe in collective punishment. Margaret's eyes flickered with hope. But you will never see another penny from me, and you will live the rest of your life knowing that the woman you dismissed as worthless could have made your final years comfortable beyond your wildest dreams. Instead, you'll have your son, your broke, unemployed, disgraced son. She smiled. Enjoy each other. Elena turned and walked toward the exit. Ryan scrambled after her. Elena, wait. Please. I'll do anything. I'll change. She stopped at the door and looked back at him. You had 3 years to change Ryan. 3 years to see me. 3 years to love me. You chose to mock me instead. You chose to celebrate my death. You chose to plan my funeral while I was still alive. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Some choices can't be unmade. She walked out of the courtroom, leaving chaos behind her. And as she stepped into the sunlight for the first time in almost a month, Elena Mitchell smiled. She was alive, she was free, and she had only just begun. 3 hours after Elena walked out of that courtroom, Ryan Carter sat alone in his car staring at his phone like it had betrayed him. 47 missed calls, 212 emails, every single one delivering the same message: his life was over. His hands shook as he scrolled through the notifications. Employment terminated. Bank accounts frozen. Credit cards declined. His LinkedIn profile had been flooded with messages from colleagues asking what happened, what he had done, why every company in Boston suddenly wanted nothing to do with him. He called his best friend David, the one who had gotten him the Morrison job 6 years ago. "David, thank God. Listen, something crazy happened. Elena woke up and she's claiming she owns— I know what she owns, Ryan." David's voice was ice cold. "I just got off the phone with my boss. We're cutting all ties with you, effective immediately." "What, David? We've been friends for 15 years. You can't just— 15 years, and you never told me your wife was Elena Mitchell. You never mentioned you were married to a billionaire? I vouched for you, Ryan. I put my reputation on the line. And now I find out you've been lying to everyone about everything." "I didn't know. I swear to God, I had no idea who she was." "That makes it worse." David's voice hardened. "You treated her like garbage because you thought she was nobody. What kind of man does that? I don't want to know you anymore, Ryan. Don't call me again." The line went dead. Ryan threw his phone against the dashboard. It cracked, but didn't break. Just like his life damaged beyond repair, but still functioning enough to feel every moment of pain. His mother was calling. He ignored it. Vanessa was calling. He ignored that too. He needed to think. He needed to find a way out of this nightmare. But there was no way out. Elena had made sure of that. Meanwhile, across town, Vanessa stood in the living room of what she had already started thinking of as her house, watching the news on the 65-inch television she had picked out last week. The story was everywhere. Billionaire heiress Elena Mitchell emerged from a month-long coma today to reveal her hidden identity and confront her husband in a dramatic courtroom appearance. Sources say Mitchell, who had been living under her married name, Elena Carter, deliberately concealed her vast wealth to test whether her husband would love her without knowing about her fortune. Vanessa's champagne glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the hardwood floor. Mitchell Holdings, valued at over $4 billion, controls numerous companies across the eastern seaboard, including the recently acquired Morrison & Associates, where Ryan Carter was employed until this morning. Her phone buzzed. Ryan. She declined the call. It buzzed again. Ryan. Declined. Again. Ryan. Declined. She walked to the closet and started pulling out suitcases. The designer clothes. The expensive jewelry. The shoes that cost more than most people's rent. She threw everything into bags with frantic efficiency. Ryan burst through the front door 20 minutes later. "Vanessa, thank God you're here. Listen, we need to talk. There's been a—" He stopped when he saw the suitcases. "What are you doing?" Vanessa didn't look at him. She kept packing. "Vanessa, what are you doing?" "What does it look like I'm doing, Ryan?" Her voice was flat, empty. "I'm leaving. Leaving now. After everything we've been through together." She laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Everything we've been through. You mean the affair, the lies, the plan to let your wife die so we could be together." She finally turned to face him. "You told me she was nobody. You told me she was worthless. A pathetic housewife with no money and no future. I thought she was— I didn't know. You didn't know your own wife was a billionaire." Vanessa's voice rose to a shriek. "You were married to the richest woman in Massachusetts, and you thought she was poor. How stupid are you?" Ryan grabbed her arm. "Vanessa, please. I love you. We can figure this out together." She yanked her arm free. "Love me. You don't love me. You don't love anyone but yourself. You kept me around because I was convenient, just like you kept Elena around because she was useful." Her lip curled with contempt. "The only difference is I knew what I was doing. I stayed because I thought you had potential, money, a future." She gestured around the house. "But you have nothing. Less than nothing. You're toxic now. Everyone in this city knows what you did. No one will hire you. No one will touch you. And I refuse to go down with your sinking ship." She grabbed her suitcases and walked toward the door. "Vanessa, wait. Please, I'm begging you." She stopped with her hand on the doorknob. "You know what's funny? Ryan, Elena was right about you. You're pathetic. You're desperate. You're exactly what you accused her of being." She opened the door. "Goodbye, Ryan. Try not to end up on the street." The door slammed behind her. Ryan stood alone in the empty house, surrounded by furniture that wasn't his, in a life that had completely collapsed. For the first time since Elena's accident, he felt something that might have been genuine emotion. Fear. The next morning, Margaret Carter arrived at Ryan's house with a plan. "We need to fight this," she announced, sweeping into the living room like she still owned the world. "Elena can't just destroy us. We have rights. We'll sue her for what, Mother?" Ryan's voice was hollow. He hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, hadn't moved from the couch since Vanessa walked out. For emotional distress. For entrapment. She deceived you, Ryan. She lied about who she was for 3 years. That has to be illegal. She didn't lie. She just didn't tell me she was rich. Same thing? It's not the same thing, and you know it. Ryan finally looked at his mother. His eyes were red, his face unshaven. She didn't do anything wrong except marry a man who didn't deserve her. Margaret recoiled. "Don't you dare defend her. After everything she's done to this family? What did she do, Mother? What exactly did she do?" Ryan's voice rose. "She cooked our meals. She cleaned our house. She listened to your complaints and bought your gifts and tried everything she could think of to make us happy. She tricked us. She tested us. And we failed." Ryan laughed bitterly. "God, we failed so completely. We treated her like dirt because we thought she had nothing, and the whole time she had everything. She just wanted to know if we could love her without it." Margaret's face hardened. "This isn't you talking. You're in shock. Once you've had time to process what? The fact that I celebrated my wife's death, the fact that I planned her funeral while she was still breathing, the fact that I asked doctors to euthanize her so I could be with my mistress." He stood up abruptly. "I'm not in shock, Mother. I'm awake. For the first time in my pathetic life, I'm actually awake. And I don't like what I see." "Ryan, get out." "Excuse me?" "Get out of my house. Actually, it's not my house. It's Elena's house. She paid for everything. The furniture, the car, the clothes on my back. I didn't earn any of it. I just took and took and took until there was nothing left to take." Margaret stood her ground. "I am your mother. I will not be spoken to like what? Like you spoke to Elena. Like you spoke to a woman you thought was beneath you." Ryan walked to the door and opened it. "I learned how to be cruel from you, Mother. I learned how to look down on people. How to judge them by what they have instead of who they are." His voice cracked. "And now I've lost everything because of it. So please, leave. I need to figure out how to live with what I've done." Margaret stared at him for a long moment. Her face cycled through shock, anger, and finally, something that might have been guilt. Then she gathered her purse and walked out without another word. Ryan closed the door behind her and leaned against it, sliding down until he sat on the floor. For the first time since childhood, he cried. 2 days later, Elena Mitchell sat in the penthouse suite of the Four Seasons, reviewing documents with Marcus Webb. "The divorce papers are ready," Marcus said, sliding a folder across the table. "Ryan has no grounds to contest. Given the circumstances, any judge will grant you everything you're asking for." Elena signed without hesitation. "What about the house?" "Legally yours. You purchased it through a shell company before the marriage. Ryan has 30 days to vacate. Give him 60. I'm not heartless." Marcus raised an eyebrow but made a note. "The restraining order. Approved this morning. He can't come within 500 feet of you or any of your properties." Elena nodded slowly. She had expected to feel satisfaction at this moment. Triumph. Vindication. Instead, she felt tired. "Marcus, Can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think I made a mistake, hiding who I was? Marcus set down his pen and looked at her with the steady gaze of a man who had known her since childhood. I think you were looking for something real in a world full of facades. I think you wanted to be loved for yourself, not your inheritance. Those aren't mistakes, Elena. Those are human needs. But if I had told him the truth from the beginning, then he would have treated you like a queen while secretly despising you for having more than him. Or he would have used you for your money while pretending to love you. Either way, the man he is wouldn't have changed. Elena absorbed this. Ryan Carter was cruel to you because cruelty is in his nature. Marcus continued. He didn't become cruel because he thought you were poor. The poverty just gave him permission to show who he really was. And who is he really? A small man who wanted to feel big. He found someone he thought was smaller than him, and he stepped on her to make himself taller. Elena looked out the window at the Boston skyline. I loved him, Marcus. Despite everything, I actually loved him. I know. And that's not something to be ashamed of. Love isn't weakness, Elena. Giving it to the wrong person doesn't make you foolish. It makes you human. She turned back to face him. I'm done being human, at least for a while. What do you mean? I mean I'm going to rebuild, not just my life, everything. The foundation we discussed for women in abusive relationships. The scholarship fund for survivors. I want to take everything Ryan and his family tried to destroy and turn it into something that helps people. Marcus smiled. That sounds like the Elena Mitchell I remember. Good. Elena picked up her pen. Because she's back, and she's not hiding anymore. 1 week after the courtroom revelation, Ryan Carter received an unexpected visitor. He had spent the days since his world collapsed in a fog of alcohol and self-pity. The house was a mess. He was a mess. The man who had once prided himself on his appearance now wore stained clothes and hadn't showered in days. The doorbell rang. He ignored it. It rang again, and again, and again. Finally, he dragged himself off the couch and yanked open the door. Dr. Samuel Brooks stood on the porch. Mr. Carter, may I come in? Ryan stared at him, confusion cutting through the haze. Why are you here? Did something happen? Is Elena? Elena is fine. Better than fine, actually. But that's not why I'm here. Dr. Brooks walked past him into the house, taking in the empty bottles and scattered debris with clinical detachment. I'm here because I have something to say to you. Something I've been waiting a month to say. Ryan closed the door slowly. Okay. Dr. Brooks turned to face him. I've been a doctor for 30 years. I've seen people at their best and their worst. I've watched families come together in crisis and tear themselves apart in grief. I thought I'd seen everything. He paused. Then I met you. Ryan said nothing. Do you know what the hardest part of the last month was? It wasn't watching Elena fight for her life. It wasn't the medical challenges or the uncertainty. It was standing outside her door listening to you and your family celebrate her death. I didn't know she could hear us. Would it have mattered? Dr. Brooks's voice was sharp. Would you have treated her differently if you'd known she was awake? Or would you have just been more careful about what you said out loud? Ryan opened his mouth to respond, then closed it. That's what I thought. Dr. Brooks shook his head. You weren't cruel because you thought she couldn't hear. You were cruel because you thought she couldn't fight back. Big difference. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to understand something. Dr. Brooks stepped closer. Elena Mitchell didn't destroy you. You destroyed yourself. Every word you spoke in that hospital room, every plan you made, every laugh you shared with your mistress over your wife's dying body, those were choices. Your choices. He headed for the door. Elena just made sure there were consequences. He paused with his hand on the knob. One more thing. I've worked at Mitchell General for 11 years. Elena's company has donated millions to our research programs, saved thousands of lives, built facilities that will help people for generations. He looked back at Ryan. What have you ever done for anyone besides yourself? The door closed. Ryan stood alone in his ruined life, surrounded by evidence of his own failures, and had no answer. 3 weeks after the revelation, Elena returned to Mitchell Holdings headquarters for the first time since her accident. The building was 60 stories of glass and steel, rising like a monument to her father's ambition and her own expansion. She had avoided it during her marriage, afraid that someone might recognize her, might blow her cover, might destroy the experiment she was running. Now she walked through the front doors with her head held high. The lobby fell silent. Security guards straightened. Receptionists stood at attention. Word had spread through the company like wildfire. The boss was back, and she had a story that Hollywood couldn't have invented. Elena ignored the stares. She stepped into the elevator, pressed the button for the executive floor, and rose toward the life she had temporarily abandoned. Her assistant James met her as the doors opened. "Mrs. Mitchell, welcome back. I've prepared everything you requested." "Thank you, James. And it's Ms. Mitchell now. The divorce is finalized." "Of course. My apologies." They walked together toward her office, a corner suite, with windows overlooking the harbor. Elena had designed it herself years ago, before she had decided to play Cinderella in reverse. "What's on the agenda?" James consulted his tablet. "Board meeting at 10, press conference at 2, interview requests from every major outlet in the country, and about 400 personal messages from employees welcoming you back." Elena smiled slightly. "Start with the board meeting. The press can wait." "Yes, Ms. Mitchell." She reached her office door and paused. "James." "Yes. Thank you for keeping things running while I was away." James's professional demeanor softened. "I've worked for you for 8 years, Ms. Mitchell. I've seen you build this company through sheer willpower and brilliance. A month in a hospital bed doesn't change who you are." Elena felt something warm in her chest, something she had almost forgotten existed. Gratitude. "Get me coffee," she said, pushing open the door. "The good stuff. It's going to be a long day." The board meeting lasted 4 hours. Elena answered questions about her health, her plans, her marriage, her spectacular public confrontation with Ryan. She addressed concerns about company stability, stock prices, and media coverage. She outlined her vision for the future, the foundation, the scholarships, the expansion into new markets. By the end, even the skeptics were convinced. "Any other questions?" Elena asked, surveying the room. Gerald Morrison, the oldest board member, raised his hand. "Just one, Elena. Are you okay? Not as our CEO, as a person. Are you okay?" The room went quiet. Elena considered the question carefully. "I spent a month trapped inside my own body, listening to people I thought loved me celebrate my death. I heard my husband plan my funeral. I heard his mother call me worthless. I heard his mistress mock everything I had sacrificed." She paused. "Am I okay? No, not yet. But I will be. Because I survived. Because I'm stronger than they ever imagined. And because I have a company full of people who actually see my value." She stood. "That's all for today. Let's get back to work." The board filed out, but Gerald lingered. "Elena." "Yes." "Your father would be proud of you. Not for the revenge, he would have approved of that, but it wasn't his style. He'd be proud because you survived. Because you turned pain into purpose. Because you're still standing." Elena felt tears prick her eyes, but refused to let them fall. "Thank you, Gerald." He nodded and left. Elena turned to the window and looked out at the city she had helped build. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "Love is weakness. Focus on power." He had been wrong. Love wasn't weakness. Love was risk. And like any risk, sometimes it paid off, and sometimes it destroyed you. She had bet on love and lost. But she had survived the loss. And now she would build something better from the ashes. The press conference drew 300 reporters and made national news. Elena stood at the podium, cameras flashing questions, shouting from every direction. She wore a simple black dress, not mourning, but power. Her hair was pulled back, her makeup minimal. She looked exactly like what she was, a woman who had walked through fire and emerged holding matches. Miss Mitchell, why did you hide your identity from your husband? Because I wanted to know if real love existed. If someone could value me for who I am, not what I own. And what did you find? Elena's expression didn't change. I found that some people are incapable of love. They can only perform it when they think there's something to gain. Do you regret the experiment? I regret giving 3 years of my life to someone who didn't deserve them. But I don't regret learning the truth. Better to know who someone really is than to spend a lifetime believing a lie. What's next for you, Ms. Mitchell? Elena looked directly into the cameras. Rebuilding. Not just my personal life, but something larger. I'm establishing the Mitchell Foundation for Domestic Abuse Survivors. It will provide financial support, legal assistance, and housing for women escaping abusive relationships. Because what happened to me, the emotional cruelty, the calculated destruction, the complete dismissal of my value as a human being happens to thousands of women every day. Most of them don't have billions of dollars to fight back. She paused. I do. And I intend to use every penny to make sure no woman ever feels as worthless as my husband tried to make me feel. The room exploded with follow-up questions, but Elena simply stepped away from the podium. She had said what she needed to say. Now it was time to act. 2 months after the courtroom confrontation, Elena received an unexpected letter. It arrived at her office, addressed by hand, with no return address. James almost threw it away as potential threat mail, but something made him bring it to Elena instead. She opened it alone. The handwriting was unfamiliar, shaky, desperate. Dear Elena, I know you have no reason to read this. I know I have no right to contact you. But I need you to know that I'm sorry. Not because you're rich. Not because you destroyed my life. Because I finally understand what I did. I spent 3 years treating you like you were beneath me. I mocked your cooking, your cleaning, your constant efforts to please me. I told myself I was settling, that I deserved better, that you were lucky to have me. I was wrong. You weren't lucky. You were cursed. Cursed to be married to a man so small, so insecure, so fundamentally broken that he couldn't recognize love when it was standing right in front of him. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm not asking for another chance. I know that ship has sailed and sunk and been eaten by sharks. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what I had. I see what I lost. I see the monster I became because I thought you were too weak to fight back. I was wrong about you, Elena. About everything. I hope you find someone who deserves you. Because it clearly wasn't me. Ryan. Elena read the letter twice. Then she folded it carefully, placed it in her desk drawer, and went back to work. She didn't respond. Some apologies came too late to matter. 6 months later, Elena Mitchell stood at the opening ceremony of the first Mitchell Foundation shelter. It was a beautiful building, warm, welcoming, designed to feel like home rather than institution. 50 beds for women escaping domestic violence, counseling services, legal aid, job training. Everything Elena had wished she'd had during her darkest moments, even though her prison had been different from most. The mayor was there. The press was there. Hundreds of supporters filled the courtyard. But Elena wasn't looking at any of them. She was looking at a woman in the crowd. Mid-30s. 2 children clutching her hands. A fading bruise on her cheek and a spark of hope in her eyes. That woman was why Elena had built this place. That woman was why she had survived. Thank you all for being here today, Elena said into the microphone. This shelter isn't about me. It's not about my story, or my marriage, or my very public revenge against people who wronged me. She paused. It's about her. She pointed to the woman with the children. And her. Another woman near the back. And her. A teenager standing alone, arms wrapped around herself. It's about every woman who has ever been made to feel worthless by someone who was supposed to love her. Elena's voice strengthened. I was trapped in a hospital bed for a month, unable to move, unable to speak while people I trusted planned my death. I know what it feels like to be powerless, to be dismissed, to be treated like an inconvenience rather than a human being. She looked out at the crowd. But I also know what it feels like to rise, to fight back, to discover that you are so much stronger than anyone ever gave you credit for. She smiled. This shelter is proof of that strength. Not mine, yours. Every woman who walks through these doors has already survived the hardest part. She's already made the choice to fight for herself. All we're doing is giving her a safe place to land. The crowd applauded. Elena stepped back from the podium and felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Peace. Not happiness, not yet. The wounds from her marriage would take years to fully heal. But peace. The quiet knowledge that she had taken her pain and transformed it into something meaningful. The woman with the children approached her after the ceremony. Ms. Mitchell. Please call me Elena. Elena. The woman's voice trembled. I just wanted to say thank you. My husband, he did things, said things, made me believe I was nothing, that no one would ever want me. Elena took her hand. He was wrong. I know that now. Tears spilled down the woman's cheeks. But for so long I believed him. I stayed because I thought I deserved it. I thought if I just tried harder, cooked better, cleaned more, he would finally love me. Elena felt her own eyes sting. I know exactly what you mean. You do. More than you could possibly imagine. The woman looked at her, really looked, and saw not a billionaire, not a celebrity, not a symbol. Just another survivor. We're going to be okay, the woman whispered. Aren't we? Elena squeezed her hand. Yes, we are. Because we're still here. Because we fought. Because we refused to let them win. She smiled through her tears. And because we're never going to let anyone make us feel worthless again. 8 months after Elena walked out of that courtroom, the phone call came at 3 a.m. She had been sleeping peacefully for the first time in weeks, finally free from the nightmares that had plagued her since the coma. The foundation was thriving. Her companies were stronger than ever. She had even started to believe that happiness might be possible again. Then her phone rang. Ms. Mitchell. The voice was unfamiliar, official. This is Officer Daniels with the Boston Police Department. I'm calling about Ryan Carter. Elena sat up in bed, her heart suddenly racing. What about him? He's been in an accident. A serious one. He's asking for you. Elena's first instinct was to hang up. To let Ryan deal with his own problems. To remind herself that she owed him nothing, that he had forfeited any claim on her compassion the moment he celebrated her death. But something in the officer's voice made her pause. How serious? Ma'am, I think you should come to Mass General. He might not make it through the night. Elena closed her eyes. She thought about the man who had laughed beside her hospital bed. The man who had planned her funeral. The man who had called her worthless, pathetic, a burden he couldn't wait to shed. She thought about all the reasons she should stay in bed and let karma finish what it had started. Then she got up and reached for her clothes. The hospital was quiet at 4 a.m. Elena walked through the same corridors where she had nearly died 8 months ago, surrounded by the same antiseptic smell, the same fluorescent lights, the same mechanical beeping that had been the soundtrack to her darkest days. A nurse met her at the ICU entrance. Ms. Mitchell. He's in room 412. I should warn you the injuries are extensive. He was hit by a drunk driver while walking home. The doctors have done everything they can, but... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Elena walked alone to room 412. She pushed open the door and saw him. Ryan Carter lay broken in the bed, surrounded by machines that breathed for him, pumped blood for him, kept his shattered body functioning by artificial means. His face was swollen beyond recognition. Bandages covered most of his head. Tubes snaked from every visible part of his body. He looked exactly like she had looked 8 months ago. The irony was not lost on her. His eyes opened when he heard her footsteps. They were the only part of him that remained unchanged, those warm brown eyes that had first attracted her in a coffee shop on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. "Elena." His voice was barely a whisper filtered through pain and medication. "You came." "I don't know why." "I do." He tried to smile but winced instead. "Because you're a better person than I ever deserved." Elena stood at the foot of his bed, keeping her distance. "What happened?" "Drunk driver. Hit and run. I was walking home from my 3rd interview this week. Night shift at a warehouse. Only job I could get." He coughed and blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. "Funny, isn't it? I spent 3 years treating you like you were worthless. Now I can't even get hired to move boxes." "That's not funny. That's justice." "I know." His eyes filled with tears. "I know it is. And I'm not asking you to feel sorry for me. I'm not asking for anything except I needed to see you. One more time. Before—" He couldn't finish. Elena felt something crack inside her chest. Not love that had died long ago, but something else. Something complicated that she couldn't quite name. "Why did you call for me? Why not your mother? Why not Vanessa?" Ryan laughed bitterly, then grimaced in pain. "My mother hasn't spoken to me in 4 months. She blames me for destroying her social standing. Says I humiliated her in front of everyone she knows." "And Vanessa?" "Vanessa is engaged to a hedge fund manager. I saw the announcement in the paper last week." He paused. "She was never going to stay, Elena. She told me that the day she left. She only wanted me for what she thought I could become. When I lost everything, she lost interest." Elena absorbed this information without expression. "So, I'm your last resort." "No." Ryan's voice cracked. "You're my first choice. You were always my first choice. I was just too stupid and selfish to realize it." He reached out his hand, the one that wasn't wrapped in bandages, toward her. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm not asking for a second chance. I know that's impossible. I needed to tell you something. Something I should have said every day of our marriage." Elena didn't move. "I loved you." The words hung in the air between them. "Not at first," Ryan continued, tears streaming down his bruised face. "At first you were just convenient, easy, someone who made my life simpler. But somewhere along the way, somewhere between the meals you cooked and the way you smiled when I came home, and the warmth you brought to that cold apartment." He choked on a sob. "I fell in love with you. Really fell in love. And I was so terrified of that feeling, so scared of being vulnerable, that I buried it. I told myself I didn't love you. I convinced myself you were beneath me. Because admitting the truth would have meant admitting that I needed someone. That I wasn't as strong and independent as I pretended to be." Elena felt her own eyes burning. "You had a strange way of showing love, celebrating my death, planning my funeral, asking doctors to kill me." "I know." Ryan's voice broke completely. "I know. I was a monster. I became something I didn't recognize, and I did it because I was afraid. Afraid of losing control. Afraid of admitting that the woman I'd dismissed as worthless was actually the best thing that ever happened to me." He closed his eyes. "I spent 8 months thinking about those days in the hospital. Every cruel word I said. Every laugh I shared with Vanessa over your dying body. I can't take any of it back. I can't undo what I did. All I can do is tell you the truth now when it doesn't matter anymore." He opened his eyes and looked directly at her. "You deserved so much better than me, Elena. You deserve someone who could see you. Really see you. Not just the cooking and cleaning and sacrifice, but the brilliant, beautiful, incredible woman underneath." His voice faded to almost nothing. I'm sorry I wasn't that person. I'm sorry I wasted 3 years of your life. I'm sorry I made you feel worthless when you were actually priceless. The machines beeped steadily. The ventilator hissed. Elena stood frozen, fighting emotions she didn't want to feel. Why are you telling me this now? Because I'm dying. Ryan said it simply without self-pity. The doctors gave me maybe 12 hours. Internal bleeding they can't stop. And I couldn't go without you knowing. He tried to reach for her hand again. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking you to feel anything for me. I just needed you to know that somewhere inside the monster I became, there was a man who loved you, who still loves you, who will die loving you. Elena stared at him for a long moment. Then she did something that surprised them both. She walked to his bedside and took his hand. I believe you, she said quietly. Ryan's eyes widened. You do. I believe that you loved me, in your own broken, twisted way. I believe that fear and insecurity turned you into someone you didn't want to be. She squeezed his hand gently. But believing isn't the same as forgiving. And understanding isn't the same as excusing. You made choices, Ryan. Every cruel word, every laugh, every plan, those were choices. You chose to hurt me because you thought I couldn't fight back. I know. And I chose to fight back anyway. Elena's voice hardened. I chose to survive. To rise. To build something meaningful from the wreckage of what you tried to destroy. She released his hand. I don't hate you anymore, Ryan. I spent months hating you and it was exhausting. But I don't forgive you either. Some things can't be forgiven. They can only be survived. Ryan nodded weakly. That's more than I deserve. Yes, it is. Elena walked to the door. Elena? She paused. Thank you for coming, for listening, for being the kind of person who shows up at 4 a.m. for someone who doesn't deserve it. Elena looked back at him one last time. Goodbye, Ryan. She walked out and didn't look back. Ryan Carter died at 7:43 that morning. Elena received the call while sitting in her office, staring at paperwork she couldn't focus on. The nurse who delivered the news was kind, professional, detached, just doing her job. He passed peacefully. His last word was your name. Elena thanked her and hung up. She sat alone for a long time, processing emotions she hadn't expected to feel. Grief. Not exactly. Relief. Partly. Something else, something more complicated, the strange weight of being the last person someone loved before they died. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus Webb. Heard about Ryan. Are you okay? She typed back. I don't know. Marcus appeared at her office door 20 minutes later. I brought coffee, he said, setting a cup on her desk. The good stuff. You didn't have to come. Yes, I did. He sat down across from her. You just watched your ex-husband die. Even after everything he did, that's not nothing. Elena wrapped her hands around the warm cup. He told me he loved me. Right before the end. Said he'd been in love with me the whole time, but was too scared to admit it. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Do you believe him? I do, actually, which almost makes it worse. Why? Elena sighed. Because if he had just said it when it mattered, if he had just been honest instead of cruel, everything could have been different. We could have been different. Or he could have been kind to your face while still being cruel behind your back. Fear doesn't change who someone is, Elena. It just reveals them. She considered this. You think he would have treated me badly regardless? I think people show you who they are when they think there are no consequences. Ryan thought you were dying. He thought you couldn't hear him. He thought he was safe to be his true self. Marcus leaned forward. That was his true self, Elena. The cruelty wasn't a mask. The love was. Elena felt something shift inside her. That's a harsh way to look at it. It's an honest way, and you deserve honesty. Marcus stood. Take the day off. Process this. Grieve if you need to, not for Ryan, but for the marriage you thought you had, for the love you thought was real. He walked to the door. Then come back tomorrow and keep building. Because that's what you do, Elena Mitchell. You build, even when everything around you is falling apart. 2 weeks after Ryan's funeral, a small sad affair attended only by Margaret and a handful of distant relatives, Elena received another unexpected visitor. This time, it was Margaret Carter herself. She showed up at Mitchell Holdings without an appointment, demanding to see Elena. Security was ready to escort her out, but Elena told them to let her through. She was curious what the woman who had called her nobody could possibly want. Margaret entered Elena's office, looking nothing like the imperious woman who had swept into hospital rooms and declared Elena worthless. She had aged 10 years in 8 months. Her hair had gone gray. Her designer clothes hung loose on a frame that had shrunk with stress and grief. "Elena." Her voice cracked. "Thank you for seeing me. I almost didn't. What do you want, Margaret?" Margaret sat down without being invited. Her hands trembled in her lap. "I came to apologize." Elena laughed. "Not kindly. Apologize." "For what specifically?" "For telling me I brought my illness on myself, for throwing away my grandmother's cookbook, for calling me a burden, a nobody, a woman so insignificant that my death warranted nothing more than a budget funeral." Margaret flinched at each accusation. "Yes, for all of it. For every terrible thing I said while you lay in that hospital bed. You said those things because you thought I couldn't hear you. I know. You celebrated my death because you thought I was powerless. I know. You treated me like garbage for 3 years because you thought I was beneath you." Margaret's composure crumbled. Tears streamed down her weathered face. I know all of it. And I've spent 8 months living with the consequences." Elena felt no sympathy. "What consequences?" "You lost your social standing. Your friends stopped returning your calls." Poor Margaret suffering the mild inconvenience of public embarrassment. "My son died." Margaret's voice shattered. "My only child. He died alone in a hospital bed, and I wasn't there, because I was too angry, too proud, too ashamed of what he had done, what we had done to answer his calls." She buried her face in her hands. "He called me 6 times the night of the accident. I saw the notifications and ignored them. I thought he was calling to ask for money again, to beg me to help him fix a life I blamed him for ruining." She looked up with devastated eyes. "If I had answered, if I had just picked up the phone, he wouldn't have been walking alone at 2 in the morning. He would have been safe. He would still be alive." Elena watched Margaret fall apart with clinical detachment. "And you think apologizing to me will make you feel better?" "No." Margaret shook her head. "Nothing will make me feel better. I'm not here to feel better. I'm here because Ryan asked me to come." Elena froze. "What?" Margaret reached into her purse with shaking hands and pulled out an envelope. "He wrote this before the accident. He asked me to give it to you if anything ever happened to him. I found it in his apartment last week." She placed the envelope on Elena's desk. "I don't know what it says. I didn't read it. But I know he wanted you to have it." Elena stared at the envelope, but didn't touch it. "Why should I believe you? Why should I believe anything from either of you?" "You shouldn't." Margaret stood slowly, her body seemingly exhausted by the effort of sitting. "I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm not asking for forgiveness or redemption or any of the things I don't deserve." She walked to the door. "I'm just delivering a message from my dead son to the woman he destroyed. What you do with it is your choice." She paused with her hand on the knob. "For what it's worth, Elena, I understand now why Ryan fell in love with you. You're strong. Stronger than I ever was. Stronger than anyone I've ever known." She opened the door. "I hope you find happiness. Real happiness. The kind Ryan was too broken to give you." She left. Elena sat alone staring at the envelope. She didn't open it for 3 days. When she finally did, she found a letter, handwritten, tear-stained, clearly written over multiple sessions. Dear Elena, if you're reading this, something bad has happened to me. Maybe I'm dead. Maybe I'm too sick to deliver it myself. Either way, this letter is my last attempt to say what I should have said years ago. I was a coward. Not just during the hospital. My whole life I was a coward. Afraid of failure, afraid of success, afraid of being seen for who I really was. When I met you, I was terrified. Because you were real. Genuine. Honest in a way I had never been. I knew from the first month of our marriage that you were too good for me. I could feel it every time you smiled at me, every time you brought me coffee without being asked, every time you forgave my bad moods and selfish behavior. And instead of rising to deserve you, I tore you down to my level. That's what cowards do. They can't stand being around people better than them, so they destroy them. Make them small, make them doubt themselves. I made you doubt yourself, Elena. I made you think you weren't good enough. And that is the greatest sin of my pathetic life. You were always good enough. You were always worthy. You were always the best thing that ever happened to me. I just couldn't let myself believe it. I don't know if there's an afterlife. I don't know if I'll face judgment for what I did. But if there's any justice in the universe, I'll spend eternity remembering the look on your face when you walked into that courtroom. Not the anger, not the power, the dignity. You had more dignity in that moment than I had in my entire life. I loved you, Elena. I loved you wrong, and I loved you badly, and I loved you in ways that hurt instead of healed. But I loved you. Please don't let what I did stop you from loving again. Please don't let my cruelty convince you that you're not worthy of real love. Please don't become hard and cold and closed off, because one broken man couldn't see your value. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to be loved. You deserve everything I couldn't give you. Find it. Please. Find the love you were looking for when you found me. And know that somewhere, somehow, the man who failed you is watching and wishing you nothing but joy. Forever yours, even though I never deserved to be Ryan. Elena read the letter 3 times. Then she put it away and went back to work. Some wounds needed more than words to heal. 9 months after the coma, Elena received an invitation that would change everything. It came from the National Foundation for Women's Rights, an organization that had watched Elena's public battle with her ex-husband and wanted her to keynote their annual conference. "We'd be honored to have you speak," the director said over the phone. "Your story has resonated with millions of women. They need to hear from you directly." Elena hesitated. Public speaking had never been her strength. She preferred to let her money and her work speak for her. "I don't know if I'm the right person." "You survived abuse from people who were supposed to love you. You rebuilt your life after they tried to destroy you. You created a foundation that's already helped hundreds of women." The director's voice softened. "You're exactly the right person, Ms. Mitchell. The question is whether you're ready." Elena thought about the women she'd met at her shelter openings, the survivors who had looked at her with hope in their eyes, the mothers who had brought their children to meet the woman who had shown them that fighting back was possible. "I'll do it." The conference was held in Washington, D.C. 3 weeks later. 2,000 attendees filled the ballroom. Cameras from every major network waited to capture her words. Elena stood backstage, her heart pounding. She had faced down billion-dollar deals. She had confronted her husband in a courtroom. She had survived 28 days trapped in her own body. But this was different. This was personal. A young woman approached her, mid-20s professional attire, a lanyard identifying her as a conference volunteer. "Ms. Mitchell, they're ready for you." Elena nodded and followed her to the stage entrance. "Ms. Mitchell?" The volunteer touched her arm. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course." The young woman's eyes filled with tears. "My mother was like you, married to a man who treated her like nothing, who made her feel worthless for 18 years. She never got out. She never fought back. She died believing she was exactly as small as he made her feel. Elena's throat tightened. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. The volunteer wiped her eyes. Be inspiring. Go out there and tell every woman watching that they don't have to die small, that they can fight, that they can rise. She stepped back. Do it for the women who couldn't do it for themselves. Elena walked onto that stage carrying the weight of every woman who had ever been made to feel worthless, and she delivered the speech of her life. They told me I was nothing. She began, her voice strong and clear. My husband, his mother, his mistress. They stood beside my hospital bed while I lay paralyzed, unable to move, unable to speak, and they celebrated my death. The room was silent. They called me pathetic, desperate, a burden they couldn't wait to shed. They planned my funeral while my heart was still beating. They laughed at my sacrifice, mocked my devotion, dismissed my entire existence as worthless. Elena paused. And they were wrong. She looked out at 2,000 faces, all watching, all waiting. I am not worthless. I was never worthless. No woman who has ever cooked a meal for someone she loved, who has ever cleaned a home to make it welcoming, who has ever sacrificed her own needs for the needs of others, no woman who has ever loved is worthless. Her voice rose. We have been taught to make ourselves small, to apologize for our existence, to earn love through service and sacrifice and suffering. We have been taught that our value comes from what we provide, not from who we are. She shook her head. That is a lie, the most dangerous lie ever told, and I am here to tell you the truth. She stepped forward. Your worth is not determined by how much you sacrifice. Your value is not measured by how much you suffer. Your existence has meaning beyond what you contribute to others. You are a human being deserving of respect and dignity and love simply because you exist. The applause started slowly, then built to a roar. Elena waited for it to quiet. I spent 3 years hiding who I was, hiding my wealth, my power, my success. I wanted to know if anyone could love me for myself, not for what I owned. She smiled sadly. What I found was cruelty, betrayal. People who saw my kindness as weakness and my love as leverage. Her voice hardened. But I also found something else. I found strength I didn't know I had. I found the ability to survive what should have destroyed me. I found the power to rise from a hospital bed where my husband was planning my funeral and take back everything he thought he had taken from me. She looked directly into the cameras. That power exists in every single one of you. Every woman watching this, every survivor sitting in this room, every person who has ever been made to feel small, that power is yours. The room erupted. Elena stood at the podium, tears streaming down her face, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real hope. Not for herself. She had already found her path forward. Hope for the millions of women who would hear her words and recognize their own stories, who would look at their abusers and see them clearly for the first time, who would make the choice to fight instead of surrender, to rise instead of fall, to live instead of merely survive. That night, after the speeches and the interviews and the endless handshakes, Elena returned to her hotel room and found a message waiting. It was from a number she didn't recognize. Ms. Mitchell, my name is Daniel Harrison. I'm the director of Sunrise Foundation, a nonprofit that works with domestic abuse survivors in rural communities. I watched your speech tonight. I'd like to discuss a partnership. Please call me when you have time. Elena looked at the message for a long moment. Then she smiled. The work was just beginning. Elena called Daniel Harrison the next morning at exactly 8 o'clock. She had spent the night unable to sleep, replaying her speech in her mind, wondering if she had said too much, revealed too much, made herself too vulnerable in front of 2,000 strangers and millions of viewers. But when Daniel answered the phone, all her doubts disappeared. Ms. Mitchell, thank you for calling back so quickly. His voice was warm, genuine, with a slight southern accent that softened every syllable. I hope I didn't overstep by reaching out. You didn't. Tell me about Sunrise Foundation. Straight to business. I like that. He laughed, and something in that laugh made Elena smile despite herself. We work with domestic abuse survivors in rural Appalachian communities, women who don't have access to shelters or legal aid or any of the resources that exist in big cities. How many women do you serve? Last year, about 300 directly, but we have a wait list of over 2,000. We're severely underfunded, understaffed, and honestly running on fumes and prayers. Elena felt her heart quicken. What would you need to scale? Realistically, about $10 million to build proper facilities, another $5 million for staff and programs, and a partner with the resources and visibility to help us reach more donors. That's $15 million. I know it's a lot to ask. It's not a lot. Elena's voice was firm. It's exactly what I've been looking for. Can you meet me in Boston next week? There was a long pause. Ms. Mitchell, are you serious? I don't joke about money, Mr. Harrison, or about helping women who need it. Another pause. I'll be there Monday. He was there, Monday. Elena met Daniel Harrison in the lobby of Mitchell Holdings, and her first thought was that he didn't look like any nonprofit director she had ever met. He was tall, broad-shouldered with gray-streaked hair and eyes the color of a winter sky. He wore a simple suit that had clearly seen better days, and he carried a battered briefcase that looked like it had traveled 1,000,000 miles. But it was his handshake that caught her attention. Firm, confident, with calluses that spoke of manual labor rather than desk work. Ms. Mitchell. He smiled, and the warmth in it was genuine. Thank you for seeing me. Call me Elena. And thank you for coming all this way. They walked together to the elevator, and Elena found herself noticing things she hadn't noticed about a man in years. The way he held the door for her without making a production of it. The way he looked at her when she spoke, actually listening instead of waiting for his turn to talk. The way he made her feel seen. She pushed the thought away. This was business, nothing more. The meeting lasted 4 hours. Daniel presented his organization's work with a passion that reminded Elena of herself in the early days of building Mitchell Holdings. He knew every statistic, every success story, every failure. He spoke about the women they had helped, and the women they had lost, his voice breaking slightly when he mentioned a young mother who had died because they couldn't get to her in time. We were 48 hours too late, he said quietly. Her husband found her before we could. By the time the police arrived, he couldn't finish. Elena reached across the table and touched his hand. I know what it's like to feel helpless, she said. To be trapped while people who should love you try to destroy you. Daniel looked at her with new understanding. Your speech last night. That was all real, wasn't it? Not just publicity. Every word. I'm sorry. I'm sorry you went through that. Don't be sorry. Elena withdrew her hand, suddenly aware of how personal the conversation had become. Be inspired. That's what I'm trying to do. Turn my pain into something that helps others. Daniel nodded slowly. Then let's help them together. Elena approved the $15 million partnership that afternoon. But that wasn't why Daniel Harrison stayed in her mind for weeks afterward. 3 weeks after their first meeting, Elena found herself looking forward to Daniel's calls more than she wanted to admit. They spoke daily about the partnership, about facilities and programs and staffing plans. But the conversations always drifted into other territory. Books they had read, places they had traveled, dreams they had abandoned, and dreams they still held on to. You're different from what I expected, Daniel told her during one late-night call. Elena was in her penthouse shoes, off wine in hand, feeling more relaxed than she had in months. Different how? I expected a billionaire, someone cold and corporate and untouchable. Instead I got... What? He paused. Someone real. Someone who's been broken and put herself back together. Someone who still believes in things even after everything. Elena felt her chest tighten. I almost stopped believing, she admitted. After Ryan. After everything. I almost convinced myself that love was a weakness, that vulnerability was a trap, that the only way to survive was to stay closed off forever. What changed your mind? She thought about the question carefully. The women at my shelters. The survivors who keep showing up, keep fighting, keep believing in something better, even after everything they've been through. If they can still believe, who am I to give up? Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Elena, can I ask you something personal? Her heart rate increased. Maybe. Would you have dinner with me, not as business partners, just as two people who enjoy talking to each other? Elena should have said no. She should have kept things professional, maintained the boundaries that had protected her since Ryan's death. She should have remembered that the last time she trusted a man, he celebrated her death while she lay paralyzed. Instead, she said yes. The dinner was at a small Italian restaurant in Cambridge. Not fancy, not designed to impress. Just good food and quiet conversation, and a man who looked at her like she was the most interesting person in the room. Tell me something about yourself that's not in the newspapers, Daniel said. Elena thought about it. I used to want to be a chef. A chef? He raised his eyebrows. Not a CEO. My grandmother taught me to cook when I was 7 years old. I spent every summer in her kitchen learning recipes that had been in our family for generations. Elena smiled at the memory. She used to say that food was love made visible, that when you cook for someone, you're giving them a piece of your heart. What happened to that dream? My father. Elena's smile faded. He told me that cooking was for servants, not for Mitchells, that I had responsibilities to the family business, to his legacy, that dreams were for people who couldn't afford reality. She took a sip of wine. So I put away the apron and picked up the briefcase, and I never looked back. Until you got married. Until I got married. Elena nodded. When I decided to hide my identity, I thought, maybe this was my chance, to cook for someone who didn't know I was rich, to see if they could appreciate me for what I could give, not what I could buy. And Ryan didn't appreciate you. Ryan saw me exactly as my father did, as a servant, someone to cook and clean and make his life easier. She laughed bitterly. Funny how I spent my whole life trying to escape being seen as lesser, and then I married a man who saw me as exactly that. Daniel reached across the table and took her hand. He was wrong. Your father was wrong. Anyone who can't see how extraordinary you are is blind. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. You barely know me. I know enough. Daniel's grip on her hand tightened. I know you survived something that would have destroyed most people. I know you took your pain and built something beautiful from it. I know you spend your days helping women you'll never meet because you remember what it felt like to be helpless. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. That's not ordinary, Elena. That's remarkable. Elena should have pulled away, should have protected herself, should have remembered every lesson Ryan had taught her about the danger of trust. Instead, she let Daniel Harrison kiss her hand, and she felt something she had almost forgotten existed. Hope. 4 months into their relationship, Elena faced her first real test. She and Daniel were at a charity gala, their first public appearance together. The press had been speculating for weeks about their relationship, and Elena had decided it was time to stop hiding. She wore a red dress that had cost more than most people's cars. Daniel wore a tuxedo that Marcus had insisted on buying him because his own suit was, in Marcus's words, an insult to formal wear. They walked into the ballroom together and every head turned. Ready for this? Daniel whispered. No. Elena squeezed his hand. But let's do it anyway. The first hour went smoothly. Handshakes and small talk and champagne that neither of them wanted. Elena introduced Daniel to board members and investors and society figures who had been dying to meet the man who had captured the billionaire widow's heart. Then Vanessa walked in. Elena saw her before Vanessa saw them. Her former rival was on the arm of her hedge fund fiancé, wearing a dress that was clearly designed to attract attention. She was laughing at something her companion said, her red lips curved in the same confident smile she had worn beside Ryan's hospital bed. Elena's body went cold. "What is it?" Daniel noticed immediately. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. I'm fine." But she wasn't fine. Memories flooded back. Vanessa standing over her motionless body. Vanessa mocking her pathetic life. Vanessa planning her funeral while her heart still beat. And then Vanessa saw her. Their eyes met across the ballroom. Vanessa's smile flickered, died, then returned with a harder edge. She whispered something to her fiancé and started walking toward them. "Elena." Daniel's voice was firm. "Tell me what's happening." "That woman, walking toward us. That's Vanessa." Daniel's expression hardened. "The mistress." "Yes." He moved slightly, positioning himself between Elena and the approaching threat. "Do you want to leave?" "No." Elena straightened her spine. "I'm done running from my past." Vanessa arrived with champagne glass in hand and poison in her eyes. "Elena Mitchell, what a surprise!" Her voice dripped with false sweetness. "I heard you were doing well. Building shelters for damaged women? How appropriate." Elena felt Daniel tense beside her. "Vanessa, I see you've landed on your feet. Again." "I always do." Vanessa's eyes flicked to Daniel. "And who's this, your bodyguard?" "Daniel Harrison. I run a non-profit that helps abuse survivors." Daniel's voice was polite but cold. "I've heard a lot about you, Ms. Torres." Vanessa's smile wavered. "All lies, I'm sure. Elena has a tendency toward drama. Speaking of which, I heard about Ryan. Tragic, really. He deserved better." Elena felt her hands clench. "Better than what? Better than me? Or better than the woman who abandoned him the moment he stopped being useful?" Vanessa's face darkened. "I didn't abandon him. I made a strategic decision." "You left him broke and broken because you never actually loved him. You loved what he represented. The moment he became worthless, you became gone. And you're so different." Vanessa stepped closer, her voice dropping to a hiss. "You hid your identity for 3 years. You let him think you were poor. You tested him like he was some kind of science experiment. And when he failed, you destroyed him. I gave him exactly what he deserved. You gave him nothing. You played games with his life, then acted surprised when he played games with yours." Vanessa laughed bitterly. "You know what's really funny? Elena Ryan told me once that he suspected you were hiding something. That there was more to you than you showed. I told him he was crazy. That you were exactly as boring and pathetic as you appeared." She leaned even closer. "I guess we were both wrong. You weren't boring at all. You were just a liar." Elena felt something snap inside her. "I was a woman looking for love. Real love. Not the kind that comes with a price tag. Not the kind that disappears when the money runs out." Her voice rose. "I cooked for him. I cleaned for him. I sacrificed everything trying to make him happy. And what did he do? He celebrated my death. He planned my funeral while I lay paralyzed, unable to move, unable to scream, listening to every cruel word." She stepped forward, forcing Vanessa backward. "You were there, Vanessa. You held his hand while he laughed at my suffering. You picked out a dress for my funeral before my body was even cold. You called me pathetic and desperate and worthless." Elena's voice dropped to a whisper. "But look at us now. I'm a billionaire who helps thousands of women. You're arm candy for a man who will replace you the moment he finds someone younger. Tell me again who's pathetic." Vanessa's face went white. "You think you're better than me. You think money makes you special. No, surviving makes me special. Rising makes me special. Turning my pain into purpose makes me special." Elena smiled coldly. "What do you have, Vanessa? What have you ever built? What have you ever sacrificed? What have you ever done except attach yourself to men who can give you things?" Vanessa's hand moved before Elena could react. The slap echoed through the ballroom. Elena's head snapped to the side. Her cheek burned, and every person in the room turned to stare. Daniel moved instantly, stepping between them. "That's enough. Get out of my way." Vanessa's voice was shaking with rage. "This doesn't concern you. It concerns me when someone attacks the woman I love." The words hung in the air. Elena stared at Daniel, her cheek still stinging, her heart suddenly racing for an entirely different reason. He had said it. Out loud. In front of hundreds of people. "The woman I love." Vanessa laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Love you love her. Good luck with that. Elena Mitchell doesn't know how to love. She only knows how to test people and destroy them when they fail." "That's not love," Daniel replied calmly. "That's survival. And considering what she survived, I'd say she's earned the right to be careful." Security was approaching now. Vanessa's fiancé was trying to pull her away. The crowd was whispering, phones were recording, and Elena knew this moment would be all over the internet by morning. But she didn't care. "Vanessa." Elena touched Daniel's arm, signaling him to step aside. "I want to tell you something." Vanessa paused, her fiancé's hand on her elbow. "I forgive you." The words shocked everyone, including Elena herself. "I forgive you for what you did in that hospital room. I forgive you for the cruelty and the mockery and the celebration of my death, not because you deserve it, but because I'm tired of carrying it." Elena straightened her spine. "You're going to spend the rest of your life moving from man to man, looking for something you can't name. Security maybe, or validation, or just the feeling of being wanted." She shook her head. "I used to want those things too. I wanted them so badly that I hid who I was and married a man who didn't deserve me. But I've learned something since then." She reached for Daniel's hand. "Real love doesn't require you to be small. Real love doesn't ask you to hide. Real love sees exactly who you are and chooses you anyway." She looked at Daniel, and the warmth in his eyes made everything else disappear. "I have that now, and nothing you say or do can take it from me." Vanessa stared at her for a long moment, something flickering behind her eyes that might have been envy or regret or simply confusion. Then she turned and walked away, her fiancé hurrying to keep up. The crowd parted for them, and Elena watched them go with a sense of closure she hadn't expected. It was over. Really, truly over. Daniel squeezed her hand. "Are you okay?" "I am now." Elena turned to face him. "Did you mean it?" "Mean what?" "What you said, that you love me." Daniel's expression softened. "I meant every word. I've been wanting to say it for weeks, but I was afraid. Afraid it was too soon. Afraid you weren't ready. Afraid I'd push you away by moving too fast." He cupped her face in his hands, gently touching the cheek Vanessa had slapped. "I love you, Elena Mitchell. Not your money. Not your power. Not what you can do for me or my foundation. Just you. The woman who makes me laugh. The woman who cries at sad movies and pretends she doesn't. The woman who gets up every day and fights for people she'll never meet." His voice dropped to a whisper. "I love you. All of you. Even the broken parts. Especially the broken parts." Elena felt tears streaming down her face. "I'm scared." "I know. I don't know if I can trust again. Not completely." "I know that too. I might push you away. I might test you. I might hurt you without meaning to." Daniel smiled. "Then I'll wait. I'll be patient. I'll prove every day that I'm not going anywhere." He pressed his forehead against hers. "You're worth waiting for, Elena. You're worth fighting for. And I'll spend the rest of my life showing you that, if you'll let me." Elena closed her eyes. She thought about Ryan. About the years she had wasted on a man who saw her as nothing. About the hospital bed where she had learned the true meaning of cruelty. She thought about her father. About the childhood spent believing that love was weakness. About the lessons she had internalized so deeply that she had forgotten they were even there. She thought about herself, about the woman she had been before the coma, about the woman she had become after, and she made a choice. Yes. Daniel pulled back slightly. Yes. Yes, I'll let you. Yes, I'll try. Yes, I'll take the risk. She opened her eyes and looked directly into his. I love you too, Daniel. I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if I'll ever be completely healed. But I love you, and I want to try. He kissed her. Right there in the ballroom, surrounded by 200 watching eyes and a dozen recording phones. He kissed her like she was the only person in the world, like nothing else mattered, like he had been waiting his entire life for this moment. And Elena kissed him back. The next morning, every headline in America carried the same story. Billionaire Elena Mitchell finds love again after surviving betrayal and near-death experience. From coma to romance, the incredible journey of the woman who rose from the dead. Mitchell Foundation founder makes public debut with new partner at charity gala confronts former rival. Elena read the articles with her morning coffee, Daniel still asleep in the bedroom they had started sharing. Marcus called at 8. Well, you certainly know how to make news. I didn't plan it. I know. That's what makes it so perfect. He chuckled. The foundation has received over $2 million in donations since last night. Apparently, people love a good love story. Elena smiled. It's not a story. It's my life. Even better. Marcus paused. Elena, I've known you since you were 12 years old. I've watched you build empires and survive tragedies and become the most remarkable woman I've ever met. His voice softened. I've never seen you happy. Not really happy. Not until now. Elena felt her throat tighten. I'm scared, Marcus. What if it falls apart? What if I was wrong about Daniel the same way I was wrong about Ryan? Then you'll survive. You'll rise. You'll rebuild. He paused. But Elena, the fact that you can still feel scared means you can still feel hope. And hope is worth more than safety. It's worth more than protection. It's worth more than all the billions in your bank account. She wiped her eyes. When did you become so wise? I've always been wise. You just never listened. He laughed. Go wake up your boyfriend. Tell him I said welcome to the family. Elena hung up and looked at the bedroom door. Daniel was in there. The man who had told her he loved her in front of hundreds of strangers. The man who had defended her without hesitation. The man who looked at her like she was something precious. She thought about her grandmother's voice echoing across the years. Food is love made visible. When you cook for someone, you give them a piece of your heart. Elena put down her coffee and walked to the kitchen. For the first time in years, she began to cook. Daniel found her an hour later standing over a pan of scrambled eggs and bacon, the smell of fresh coffee filling the apartment. You cook? Elena turned and smiled at him. Really smiled, the kind of smile she had almost forgotten she possessed. I used to, a long time ago, before I forgot who I was. He walked up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. Will you teach me? Teach you what? To cook, to make food into love. He kissed her neck. To give you back a piece of everything you've given me. Elena leaned back into him, feeling safe in a way she hadn't felt since childhood. Yes, she said softly. I'll teach you everything. Outside, the sun rose over Boston, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Inside, two people who had found each other against all odds stood together in a kitchen filled with warmth and the smell of breakfast and the quiet certainty of new beginnings. Elena Mitchell had spent her whole life looking for love in all the wrong places. She had hidden her true self, tested the people around her, and been betrayed by those who should have cherished her. She had lain paralyzed in a hospital bed while her husband celebrated her death. She had risen from that bed and destroyed everything he thought he had. She had survived. And now, finally, she was learning to live. Not just exist, not just survive, not just build empires and help others while keeping her own heart locked away. Really live. with love, with hope, with someone who saw her completely and chose her anyway. The woman who had been called worthless by the man who was supposed to love her had discovered something important. She had worth beyond measure. And now, at last, she believed it. 1 year after that morning in the kitchen, Daniel Harrison got down on one knee. They were at Elena's grandmother's grave, a quiet cemetery in Connecticut, where wild roses grew along the iron fence. Elena had brought flowers as she did every month since recovering from the coma. Daniel had brought something else entirely. "Elena Mitchell," he said, his voice steady, despite the tears in his eyes. "I've spent my whole life helping people rebuild after they've been broken. I never expected to find someone who would help me rebuild too." Elena's hands flew to her mouth. "You showed me what real strength looks like. Not power or money or influence. Real strength. The kind that survives betrayal and rises from hospital beds and turns pain into purpose." He opened the small velvet box in his hand. "I don't have billions. I can't give you mansions or private jets or anything you couldn't buy yourself 100 times over. But I can give you something Ryan never did." His voice cracked. "I can give you someone who sees you. All of you. The brilliant businesswoman and the scared girl who just wanted to be loved. The survivor and the woman who still cries at sad movies. The billionaire and the chef who makes the best scrambled eggs I've ever tasted." Elena laughed through her tears. "I love you, Elena. Not despite your broken pieces, but because of them. Because they made you who you are. Because every scar on your heart is proof that you survived something that should have destroyed you." He held up the ring. "Will you marry me? Not because I can give you anything you don't already have, but because I want to spend the rest of my life being the person you deserve." Elena looked at the ring, then at Daniel, then at her grandmother's headstone, where the inscription read, "Love is not what you find, it's what you build." "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Daniel. 1,000 times yes." He slid the ring onto her finger and rose to kiss her, and somewhere in the distance, Elena could have sworn she heard her grandmother laughing. The engagement made headlines around the world. Billionaire survivor, Elena Mitchell engaged to nonprofit director Daniel Harrison. From betrayal to bliss, the love story that captured America's heart. Mitchell Foundation founder to wed the man who helped her heal. Elena ignored most of the coverage. She had learned long ago that the media would write whatever stories sold papers, regardless of the truth. But one article caught her attention. It was a profile piece in a national magazine featuring interviews with women who had been helped by the Mitchell Foundation. Women who had escaped abusive marriages, rebuilt their lives, found new careers and new hope, and new reasons to live. One quote stayed with Elena for days. "Before Elena Mitchell, I thought I was worthless," said a woman named Sarah, who had fled her husband after 15 years of abuse. "I thought I deserved what was happening to me. Then I heard her story. I heard about how she survived, how she rose, how she turned her pain into something that could help people like me." Sarah's voice broke in the recorded interview. "Elena Mitchell saved my life, not by giving me money or shelter, though the foundation did both. She saved me by showing me that survival was possible. That the people who hurt us don't get to decide our worth. That we can rise no matter how far we've fallen." Elena read the quote 3 times. Then she called Sarah directly. "Ms. Mitchell." Sarah's voice was shocked. "I can't believe you're calling me." "I read your interview. I wanted to thank you." "Thank me for what?" Elena paused, searching for the right words. "For reminding me why I do this. For showing me that the pain I went through wasn't meaningless. That something good came from the worst experience of my life." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "Can I tell you something, Ms. Mitchell? Please. My ex-husband used to tell me I was worthless. Every single day. He'd say I was stupid, ugly, useless, that no one else would ever want me." Her voice hardened. The day I left him, I walked into one of your shelters with nothing but the clothes on my back. The woman at the front desk looked at me and said, "You're safe now. You're worth protecting." I broke down crying. Elena felt her own eyes filling. No one had ever told me I was worth protecting. Sarah continued. No one had ever suggested that my safety mattered, that my life had value. She took a shaky breath. That's what you gave me, Ms. Mitchell. Not money, not shelter. You gave me permission to believe I was worth something, and that's a gift I can never repay. Elena wiped her eyes. You already have. The wedding was held 6 months later. Elena had wanted something small, intimate, nothing like the grand society affairs her father used to host. But news of the engagement had spread so widely that keeping things private became impossible. In the end, they compromised. The ceremony itself would be small, just close friends, foundation staff, and the women from various shelters who had become like family. The reception afterward would be open to the press, with all proceeds from media rights going directly to the Mitchell Foundation. You're turning our wedding into a fundraiser, Daniel teased. I'm turning our wedding into a statement, Elena corrected. Every woman watching will see that it's possible to survive betrayal and find love again. That's worth more than any private ceremony. Daniel kissed her forehead. Have I mentioned lately that you're remarkable? You mentioned it this morning, but I don't mind hearing it again. The morning of the wedding, Elena woke up alone. Daniel had stayed at a hotel the night before, insisting on at least one traditional element despite their unconventional relationship. Elena had agreed, but she hadn't expected to feel so lonely without him beside her. She was standing at her bathroom mirror, applying makeup with shaking hands, when someone knocked on the door. Come in. The door opened, and a woman Elena didn't immediately recognize stepped inside. She was in her 30s with dark hair and tired eyes and a scar running along her left cheekbone. She wore a simple dress that had clearly been purchased for the occasion, and she carried a small wrapped gift in her hands. Ms. Mitchell, I'm sorry to bother you on your wedding day, but I had to come. I had to see you. Elena set down her makeup brush. Do I know you? No, but you saved my life. The woman's voice broke. My name is Maria. 3 years ago, my husband beat me so badly I ended up in a coma. The doctors said I might never wake up. My husband came to visit me once, told the nurses to pull the plug, then never came back. Elena's heart stopped. I heard your story while I was in that hospital bed. Someone had left the news on in my room, and I heard about you. About what your husband did. About how you woke up and took back your life. Tears streamed down Maria's face. I decided right then that I was going to wake up too. That if you could survive, so could I. I fought my way back, Ms. Mitchell. I clawed my way out of that coma because you showed me it was possible. Elena couldn't speak. When I finally woke up, the first thing I asked for was information about your foundation. They helped me get a divorce. They helped me find a job. They helped me rebuild everything my husband had destroyed. Maria held out the small wrapped gift. I made this for you. It's not much, but I wanted you to have something from me on your wedding day. To remind you that every time you choose to keep going, every time you refuse to give up, you're giving someone else permission to do the same. Elena took the gift with trembling hands. Inside was a small handmade quilt barely larger than a dinner plate. Each square contained a word stitched in careful letters. Survivor. Strong. Worthy. Loved. I made one square for every year I was married to him, Maria explained. 15 squares. 15 years of being told I was worthless. And then I added a 16th. Elena looked at the center of the quilt. The 16th square read, Free. Thank you, Elena whispered. Thank you for coming. Thank you for showing me. She pulled Maria into a hug. Thank you for surviving. The ceremony was everything Elena had never known she wanted. Marcus Webb walked her down the aisle since her father was long dead, and there was no one else she would have asked. He held her arm with the steady grip of a man who had watched her grow from a lonely child into an extraordinary woman. "Your grandmother would be proud," he whispered as they approached the altar. "My father wouldn't be." "Your father was a fool." Marcus squeezed her arm. "You're about to marry a man who loves you for exactly who you are. That's something Harold Mitchell never understood the value of." They reached the altar, and Marcus placed Elena's hand in Daniel's. "Take care of her," he said quietly. "Not because she needs protecting, but because she deserves someone who wants to." Daniel met his eyes. "I will, for the rest of my life." The vows were simple. "I, Elena Mitchell, take you, Daniel Harrison, to be my husband. Not because I need someone to complete me, I am already complete, but because sharing my life with you makes every good thing better and every hard thing bearable." She squeezed his hands. "I spent years hiding who I was afraid that the real me wasn't worth loving. You showed me that was a lie. You showed me that the real me, the broken, scarred, sometimes difficult real me, was exactly what you wanted." Her voice cracked. "I promise to keep showing up, to keep fighting for us even when it's hard. To remember that love isn't a test to pass or fail, but a choice we make every single day." She smiled through her tears. "I choose you, Daniel, today and every day for the rest of our lives." Daniel's vows were equally simple. "I, Daniel Harrison, take you, Elena Mitchell, to be my wife, not because you're a billionaire or a survivor or a symbol of hope to millions of women, but because you make terrible coffee and laugh too loud at your own jokes and cry every time we watch that movie about the dog." Elena laughed, wiping her eyes. "I promise to never make you feel small, to never take your love for granted, to remind you every single day that you are worthy, you are valued, you are enough." He lifted her hands to his lips. "You spent 3 years married to a man who didn't see you. I promise to spend the rest of my life making sure you're never invisible again." The officiant smiled. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Daniel, you may kiss your bride." He did. And every person in that room, from the billionaire board members to the shelter residents in borrowed dresses, rose to their feet and applauded the woman who had survived the unsurvivable and found love on the other side. The reception was chaos in the best possible way. Elena danced with Daniel until her feet hurt, then danced some more. She hugged every single shelter resident who had come, remembering their names, their stories, their children. She posed for photos and gave interviews and somehow found time to eat the cake she had designed herself based on one of her grandmother's recipes. It was during a brief quiet moment, sitting alone at the head table, while Daniel fetched drinks, that Margaret Carter appeared. Elena hadn't invited her, hadn't expected her, hadn't thought about her in months. But here she was, dressed in black as always, looking older and smaller and somehow less threatening than she had in the hospital room 2 years ago. "Elena." "Margaret, this is unexpected." "I'm not staying." Margaret's voice was hoarse. "I just wanted to bring you something." She held out a worn cookbook. Elena's heart stopped. "I told you I threw it away," Margaret said quietly. "I lied. I took it. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted something of yours. Maybe I wanted to hurt you even more. Maybe I just—" She couldn't finish. Elena took the cookbook with shaking hands. Her grandmother's handwriting. Her mother's notes in the margins. Generations of love preserved in recipes and memories. "Why are you giving this back now?" Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "Because I watched your wedding on the news. I saw you walking down the aisle so beautiful, so happy, so alive." Her voice broke. "And I remembered standing beside your hospital bed telling you that you were worthless, that no one would miss you, that your death would be nothing more than an inconvenience." She shook her head. "I was wrong. About everything. About you. About what matters. About who my son really was. Elena stared at the woman who had tormented her, who had celebrated her death, who had thrown away her most precious possession. "I don't expect forgiveness," Margaret continued. "I don't deserve it. I needed you to have this. I needed to undo at least one terrible thing I did." She turned to leave. "Margaret." The older woman paused. "Thank you for bringing it back. It means more than you know." Margaret nodded once, then walked away, disappearing into the crowd and out of Elena's life forever. Elena held the cookbook against her chest and let the tears come. Some wounds never fully healed, but sometimes they became doorways to something unexpected. Grace. 2 years after the wedding, Elena stood at the podium of the United Nations, addressing a global conference on domestic violence. Her foundation had expanded to 15 countries. Her shelters had helped over 50,000 women. Her story had been turned into a documentary, a book, and countless articles that had changed the conversation around abuse. But standing in front of world leaders and diplomats and journalists from every corner of the globe, Elena didn't feel powerful. She felt small. Small in the way that only true perspective could create. Small in the face of how much suffering still existed. Small in the knowledge that no matter how much she did, there would always be more women who needed help. She took a breath and began to speak. 4 years ago, I lay in a hospital bed, paralyzed by a coma, listening to my husband celebrate my death. The room went silent. He called me worthless, pathetic, a burden he couldn't wait to shed. He planned my funeral while my heart was still beating. He laughed with his mistress while I lay trapped in my own body, unable to move, unable to speak, unable to do anything except listen and remember. She paused. I survived. I woke up. I took back my life and built something from the ashes of what he tried to destroy. Her voice strengthened. But I didn't survive because I was special. I survived because I was lucky. Lucky to have resources most women don't have. Lucky to have people protecting me when I couldn't protect myself. Lucky to wake up at all. She looked out at the assembled faces. Most women aren't that lucky. Most women who experience what I experienced never wake up, never escape, never get the chance to rebuild. She gripped the podium. That's why we're here today. Not to celebrate my story, but to change the ending for millions of women whose stories haven't been told. Women who are trapped right now in homes that should be safe with people who should love them. Women who have been told they're worthless so many times that they've started to believe it. Her voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried through the entire hall. Those women are not worthless. They are survivors waiting to rise. They are warriors waiting for weapons. They are the mothers, daughters, sisters, and friends of everyone in this room. She stood straight. And they deserve better than what we've given them. The speech lasted 45 minutes. When it was over, the entire room rose to its feet. Elena returned to Boston that night exhausted but exhilarated. Daniel met her at the airport the same way he had met her every time she traveled for the past 2 years. He held her close and kissed her forehead and didn't ask how it went, because he already knew. Tired, he asked. Exhausted. Happy. Incredibly. They walked to the car together, his arm around her waist, her head on his shoulder. I have something to tell you, Elena said as they drove through the city. Good something or bad something? I think good. I hope good. She paused. I'm pregnant. Daniel nearly drove off the road. What? When? How long have you known? I found out this morning. I wanted to tell you before the speech, but I was afraid I'd lose my nerve if I was thinking about anything else. He pulled the car to the side of the road and turned to face her. We're having a baby. We're having a baby. His face transformed. Joy, disbelief, fear, excitement. Everything flickered across his features in rapid succession. I'm going to be a father. You're going to be an amazing father." Elena took his hand. "I've seen how you are with the kids at the shelters, how patient and kind and present. Our child is going to be so lucky." Daniel's eyes filled with tears. "Elena, I don't know what to say." "Say you're happy." "I'm beyond happy. I'm terrified and overwhelmed and more grateful than I've ever been in my entire life." He pulled her close. "I love you. I love you so much. And I'm going to love this baby with everything I have." Elena smiled against his chest. "I know you will." The baby was born 8 months later. A girl, 7 pounds 3 ounces, dark hair and her father's eyes and a cry that could wake the entire hospital wing. They named her Grace. "For second chances," Elena explained to Marcus, who had rushed to the hospital the moment he heard. "For the grace I was given when I woke up from that coma. For the grace of finding Daniel. For the grace of becoming someone I can be proud of." Marcus held the baby with surprising gentleness for a man who had spent his life dealing in contracts and negotiations. "She looks like you." "Poor thing." "No." Marcus's voice was serious. "Lucky thing. The luckiest girl in the world." He handed Grace back to Elena. "Your grandmother would have loved this. A great-granddaughter named Grace. She would have said it was perfect." "It is perfect." Elena looked down at her daughter's face. "Everything is perfect." And for the first time in her life, she believed it. 5 years later, Elena stood at the opening of the 50th Mitchell Foundation shelter. Grace held her hand, a serious 5-year-old with her mother's determination and her father's kindness. Daniel stood beside them, his hair grayer now, his smile deeper, his love as steady as it had been from the very first day. The crowd was enormous. Media from around the world. Survivors from every shelter Elena had ever built. Politicians and celebrities and ordinary people who had heard her story and wanted to be part of something bigger than themselves. Elena stepped to the microphone. 10 years ago, I lay in a hospital bed, listening to my husband celebrate my death. The familiar words settled over the crowd. He called me worthless. He said my life meant nothing. He planned my funeral while my heart was still beating. She looked at Daniel, then at Grace, then out at the sea of faces before her. He was wrong. About all of it. And every shelter we build, every woman we help, every life we change, is proof of exactly how wrong he was. She smiled. "My name is Elena Mitchell Harrison. I am a survivor, a wife, a mother, a billionaire who once pretended to be poor just to find out if anyone could love me for myself." Her voice strengthened. "And I am here to tell every woman watching, every survivor struggling, every person who has ever been made to feel worthless by someone who was supposed to love them. You are not worthless. You never were. You never will be." She reached down and lifted Grace onto her hip. "This is my daughter. Her name means second chances, and she is living proof that the story doesn't end with betrayal. It doesn't end with pain. It doesn't end with lying paralyzed in a hospital bed while the people who should love you celebrate your death." Elena's eyes blazed with conviction. The story ends with rising, with surviving, with building something beautiful from the ashes of what others tried to destroy. She kissed Grace's forehead. The story ends with love. Real love. The kind that sees you and chooses you and never makes you feel small. She looked directly into the cameras. To everyone watching, your story isn't over. No matter how dark it seems, no matter how trapped you feel, no matter how many people have told you you're worthless, your story isn't over. She set Grace down and took Daniel's hand. Because the woman they tried to bury is still standing, still fighting, still rising. She smiled, and in that smile was every tear she had ever cried, every scar she had ever earned, every moment of doubt she had ever overcome. "And if I can rise, so can you." The crowd erupted. But Elena wasn't listening to the applause. She was looking at her daughter, who was looking back at her with those serious eyes that seemed to understand far more than a 5-year-old should. "Mama," Grace said, tugging her hand. "Is the story over now?" Elena knelt down to her daughter's level. "The old story is over, sweetheart. The one about the woman who got hurt and the people who hurt her." "What story is this then?" Elena smiled and pulled her daughter close. "This is the new story. The one about the woman who rose from the ashes. The one about the family who loved each other. The one about all the people we're going to help together for as long as we live." She stood lifting Grace with her and looked out at the crowd one more time, at the survivors in the front row crying and cheering, at Daniel, his eyes full of pride and love and absolute certainty, at Marcus, who had protected her legacy for decades and would continue to do so, at the cameras broadcasting her words to millions of women around the world. She had spent years being told she was worthless. She had spent months trapped in her own body listening to cruelty. She had spent her entire life looking for proof that she mattered. And she had finally found it. Not in her billions. Not in her power. Not in the headlines or the speeches or the shelters bearing her name. She had found it in the simple truth that she had survived. That she had risen. That she had turned her deepest pain into her greatest purpose. Elena Mitchell Harrison was no longer the woman who had been betrayed. She was the woman who had transformed that betrayal into a legacy that would outlast her enemies, outlast everyone who had ever tried to make her small. She was a survivor. She was a warrior. She was proof that no one, no matter how cruel, no matter how powerful, no matter how certain they are of your worthlessness, gets to write the ending of your story. Only you can do that. And Elena had written hers with courage, with purpose, and with a love that had proven stronger than any betrayal. The woman they had tried to bury had become the woman who would never be forgotten, and that was exactly how her story was meant to end.